Dr. Breuninger, lovely to have you on the show.
Happy to be back, man. Thank you.
I like to start with the Dr. Breuninger, start formal so they know, okay, this is someone worth listening to. He has a PhD, I'm sorry.
A PhD.
How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm less, I took the jacket off, so it feels less formal.
I would have put one on.
Yeah, no, this was...
it's a bit warm though.
Last time I was on, I was reading through some of the comments, and a gentleman commented that I was wearing too many shirts.
But how did he put it? You said
he said I'm counting at least 4 shirts. My wife and I were laying in bed laughing so hard. So my goal is every time I come on your show to take off one article.
Yeah.
And so I took the blazer off this time. Next time I'm taking off the button down.
Yep.
Soon I'll just be.
I appreciate comments like that.
I love it. Some of them had me laughing really hard.
I took a photo of me with Bishop Scott McCaig and I had Birkenstocks on. Yeah. Apparently that was a problem for people on YouTube. So there was like 150 awful comments. Like, is Matt transitioning? That's inappropriate.
People are fun. There are some funny people in the world.
Yeah,
there are some
but I really appreciate the funny insults. Like someone said, no, it's unknown whether wearing Birkenstocks leads to making sauerkraut or the other way around. But it's definitely
scientists are still debating.
Yeah, but that's funny.
That's funny. I do want to get out of the way too, Matt. Trying to get down here this morning. I was shaving, and I just want to. This line, I pride myself on being able to shave pretty well, and so this is like a nice tight line here.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, this one, I was shaving fast and I left quick and I didn't do the final check, and so there's a bump here.
Bit of a bump.
I should say though, I mean, I figure if they're checking out how many shirts I wear, somebody's going to see the bump. So
now we'll see whether it was worth mentioning it or we'll never know.
We'll never know.
If you had left
I poisoned the well a little bit.
All the audio listeners just updated their image of you in their head.
Exactly. That's all they're going to focus on.
And you can't just not shave, right? Like when I grew out my beard, I would only grow it from here down, but I think you're like a mountain man.
Mine comes up around my eyeballs. It's like I have to shave.
That's amazing. Do you shave up there?
Yeah, I start high. I start high, Matt.
And so does it get all prickly up?
Yeah, it's
wow.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. I have this neighbor across the street he's a barber. He's like 6'4", 250, 260. He's a big black guy, covered in tattoos. And last August, coming up on a year here, one morning he was outside. My father-in-law comes in and goes, Matt, something's going on outside. And I was like, oh no. So I go outside, there's my neighbor. And he's got this like 5'0" white girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And he's standing there with a rake and she's standing across from him with a shovel. And they're loud.
Really?
And I was like, oh no. And I was like, I gotta stop this. Like I gotta do something. So I'm holding a cup of coffee. I have no shoes on. But so I'm just thinking, okay, look, I got to jump in the middle of it. I'm going to get throttled, but it's like the right thing to do. So I hop over the fence. I'm like, hey, what's going on, y'all? What's the problem? And he's like, there's a bat in the house. And I was like, oh. So I start walking up toward him and I was like, here, give me that. And he goes, what you going to do, man? He's like, you don't got no shoes on. Got a cup of coffee in your hand. He's like, you ain't going to do nothing. I just took the rake. So I grew up in this, my grandmother's house was this old Victorian home that had bats all the time, right? So I just grabbed the rake out of his hand. I set my coffee on this step. I walk in the door. It's flying in circles. Boom, hit it. Flip it out. He was like, oh my gosh. He was like, dude. He's like, I owe you. He's like, look, I'm a barber. Come over tonight. I'm going to take care of you. Like, I'm going to hook you up. So I go over his house. He has a barbershop in his house.
Wow.
And I go over. He shaves my head, does a hot towel face shave. He faded my beard, not only top to bottom, but back to front.
Oof.
Dude, it was the tightest line I have ever had. And he taught me something. He said, so I used to shave the bottom here right along the jawline.
Yeah.
And he said, you always leave a finger length under the jaw. In like how it looks from a distance and the illusion, you want to leave a little. So anyway, that's what I do now. So when I shave, I really try to be tight about the line. I mean, this guy taught me taught me pride in my beard and hair game.
So you're going to avoid him tonight.
And so can I be honest? I'm going to go home and I'm going to fix this, because if I see him, it's going to be an issue.
A barber shop in his house.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
He's great. He's great.
Would a black man feel comfortable cutting my hair?
Man, Matt, he would. Your wife would not know what to do with you when you got home.
This fluffy hair.
He'd fade the sides up. He'd give you a high, like a high and tight, man. You would look so.
Well, I got a
you'd
high
look
and
so
tight in
good,
Florida
dude.
recently, because
Yeah.
that's what Bob Lesniewski told me to do. He's like, just ask for an aggressive fade. I'm like, all right. So that's what I did. And the first thing he did is he did a zero all around here.
Yeah, dude.
And I was terrified. But it actually looked
No, it
pretty
looks
good.
great. Yeah, it's a barber that knows what he. And then when you get the hot towel shave, it's next level. It
Yeah.
feels so good.
Yeah.
It feels so good. So apologies. That's all I wanted to say.
I love it.
Apologies.
I love it. We had a bat in our house recently. Do you know that? A bit Avila.
I did know that.
So a bit
Can you tell me
Avila.
why a bit Avila? Sorry.
Why do I think you know the answer?
Because I heard the story and I was like, man, that's so tragic. Oh my gosh, I can't believe she would do. But then I heard the backstory and I'm wondering if maybe you could share
here's
the
Avila's
backstory.
backstory.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if
Yeah.
it would be okay.
Do you think we could just get the truth out there?
Well, so it started flying around in the house, and the first time I ever saw a bat, I was terrified, because the only place I'd ever seen bats was in Dracula.
Yeah.
And I moved to North America, and there was this bat flying around the house. I'd never. I mean, obviously we have huge bats in Australia, but I didn't see any. So this time I was like, okay, it's nothing to be afraid of. So I think I told the kids, like, let's capture it, and then they got a sheet. Maybe did Avila say? What did she say to you? I think she would have said to you that I said I'd give her money if she caught it.
100%. The story on the table was, I'll give you $100 if you touch it. If you touch it. That's
I don't
the story
think
and it didn't come from Avila.
No,
It's
I
been
don't.
filtered down through town.
Oh, really?
Like through Steubenville. That's the story.
I don't think I
Yeah.
would have said that. I could see myself, because I don't remember. It was all such an event. I could imagine myself saying, "I'll give you $100 if you capture it," just out of enthusiasm. But I don't think I would have said, "If you touch it." I don't want my daughter to have to touch it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a sheet. We covered it, and then she was letting it out, and it bit her, so she had to have like 3 or 4 rabies shots.
Rabies, if you want to not sleep at night, if you legitimately want to not sleep at night, look up rabies.
Really?
Look up the symptoms and progression of rabies. It's horrifying. And by the time you show your first symptom, you're dead. If you become symptomatic,
Neil, you got to look it up for us,
you know,
can you?
if you show symptoms, it's too late.
Really?
And you will die. Rabies is horrifying.
Okay. Well, I'm glad then we took her to get her 4 shots.
Real quick, did she get the money?
No.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
I'm here for you, Avila. There's record now. Yeah.
So anyway, the other night I'm laying in bed with my bride and we're watching 24.
I loved,
Which is when movies
It's
peaked. The television peaked at 24. We've even watched it. We started watching this when we got married, and we were like, what if we just went back and watched
can
the
we
first
talk
season?
about how
Loved
absurd,
it.
okay, I want to hear the rest of this, but then I want to come back to this
Okay.
and talk about if that happened in a 24-hour period, you would have so much PTSD. It would be unbelievable. Okay.
Yeah, all right, we can do that.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm watching 24, so I'm already like just
Hype.
pumped.
Yeah, you're ready.
And my son, Liam, bursts through the room. Dad, there's a bat. And I just went into full Jack Bauer mode. And here's what happened,
Bauer,
right?
Bauer.
Eye of the Tiger started playing in the
Absolutely.
background. I walked out and went, shut Avila's door. For some reason,
Because
I
we're
thought
protecting her now.
Yeah, for some reason, its friend bit her, and he knew about it. And he was coming back for her. Shut the doors. And it was like flying around me. And I said, Liam, go get me something to hit it with.
Absolute, Matt.
And it took a while, but here's what I did. It flew towards me, and I high-fived it in the face, and it hit the wall and died.
You did it with your hand.
Yeah. It's possible I will have rabies, and Neil will read what happens to me soon. But I felt so freaking manly. And then Liam came down with a giant machete. What the hell am I going to do
You'd
with
have
a
to be
machete?
so good to hit it with
like
a
that
machete.
fruit cutting
You'd have to
game.
be so good to hit a bat with a
So
machete.
he ended up scooping it into a box and dumping it.
The good news is they tend to fly in circles, so there's a somewhat predictable pattern, but I love it. So here's what I do. Always keep, we have these old homes, always keep a tennis or racquetball racket handy. That thing starts making its rounds.
That's a great idea.
You
Tennis
just-
racket would have been way better than a machete.
Your hand, can I be honest? It's a baller move to hit it with your hand.
I might have rabies.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this could be a goodbye, but can I tell you? Okay.
It'd be weird if this launched in
And then
August after I've died.
And you've already died.
Mm-hmm.
But you died a winner.
Thank you.
You hit a bat with your hand out of the air.
After having said, shut Avila's door.
I was playing racquetball with this student in March.
You told us this story.
I'll tell you this?
I think when you said you didn't want him to win. So
Okay. Yeah.
That one?
I was basically like, I started getting chest pains in the middle of the match. And I was like, I'm not going to lose to some 20-year-old kid. So I won. And then I ended up in the ER. And my wife was like, what, why, Matt, why? And I was like, because if I died, I wanted you to know you married a
Your
winner.
husband was a champion.
I could either die and lose or die and win. So I feel like no matter what happens here, Matt, you've hit a bat out of the air with your hand.
Yeah.
That means you're an absolute baller.
So what's the deal with rabies?
Well, it's basically everything you know about rabies. You get
I know nothing about rabies.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just read some of this. The
Is something
symptoms are
about foaming
followed
in
by
the
one
mouth?
or more of the following symptoms. Nausea, vomiting, violent movements, uncontrollable excitement. This one gets me. Fear of water.
That's what
An
page?
inability to move parts of the body, confusion,
Yes.
and loss of consciousness.
Yeah.
Fear of water.
That I've never heard that. What is this Wikipedia? What is this?
Fear of water?
How long does it take to progress to death?
That's the thing is, here it says, let's see, it's usually 1 to 3 months, and it can
crap.
start in as short as 4 days or
Because I literally
longer
just
than
thought, I'm
6
liking this
years.
water.
Yeah.
There's no problem. It's like, is it bathtub water, drinking water, rainwater,
I think
puddles?
it's like bodies of water, yeah.
Oh,
Or like
bodies
a
of
lake.
water. How weird
That's
would that
strange. That one's strange to me. I don't.
be? So 24, PTSD.
Oh, okay. So if you I remember watching an episode of 24 where he like flies down to Mexico in the morning, like tortures his girlfriend because he thinks that she's like maybe a spy or something. So he tortures her, then like
America.
finds out that it's like not her. So he like lets her go. She forgives him same day. Within the same 12-hour period, she forgives him. They fly back. He then like, kills 3 guys, and then like the president's the White House explodes or something.
Whatever.
If you tortured your girlfriend in the morning, like that's gonna mess most people up for months, right?
If not the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And by the afternoon, he's like already killing guys. Like they've already made up, they've kissed. It's like, so sorry, you know how to do that. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. I know. How could you? It's that 24-hour or that 1 hour clock.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, each episode's an hour, right? So it's like if you did that in an hour, you're in Mexico, 15 minutes, you torture your girlfriend and you're back. Come on.
I don't know why there haven't been more parodies about 24. Like, suppose Jack begins with a nice Thai food meal, but then gets violent diarrhea from it. And the world needs him, but he's on the can.
But that's 6 hours of the show. 6 hours.
Just him on the can.
He's like,
That's it.
It's the dramatic music playing.
the
That's
clock
right.
ticking.
Or maybe he's sick one day and just spends the day in bed. It's just 24
does Bauer
hours.
get the flu?
Yeah, does he ever
Just a
urinate?
24-hour bug. The amount of things that happen. If you were to, it would be actually really funny. Look, someone on YouTube will do this.
This could be a good course.
Somebody
All right, tell
actually
them.
did this. Like people watch these and they like every minute that we talk about something, they write down what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Like, I want someone to do that with 24. Write down at every minute of 24. Timestamp 24. And the list it'll be so much fun. Mail it to Matt. And
We'll read
the
it
next
on
time
the
I'm on,
show.
we're going to read it.
That is quite the job to give to somebody. But people on the internet are weird. There's bound to be someone who's
Someone
going to
will
do it. Some
Someone-
college kid.
Somebody's watching it anyway. So
That's
let's
right.
make it worth our while.
It's such a good show.
Yeah. It's great.
I think what they do is, and this is probably the key to just good writing, is there's tension in every relationship that you're introduced to. There's some serious thing that's happening in every person's life, and you want all of it to resolve. And so you're just like,
And that's how at the end of each episode, there's always, the way they leave the tension, there's
Always
always
a
a cliffhanger.
yeah,
And you're just desperate for resolution.
yeah.
Desperate.
Do you find that your wife and I, your wife and you,
Absolutely, I do not.
do you find that you guys ever are like watching too much TV, or you're like, why don't we put this away for a week? Does it ever become a problem?
No, I think.
Me neither. I was just asking.
I'll say that. Let me say this. I love unwinding at night with a show. I love it. And so for a long time, the way Britt and I would just unwind is we get the kids in bed, get a bowl of ice cream, like talk for a bit, get a bowl of ice cream, and just watch an episode of a show.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's a comedy like The Office or, and then, but I think we go through sort of phases. It ebbs and flows and sort of pretty naturally, I think. Like most recently we watched season 6 of Peaky Blinders, which is pretty intense. But we watched it and we just don't have a show now. And so we haven't been watching anything in the evenings.
Last night, my wife's like, okay, I just got a bit of heartburn. I can't go to bed right now. Can we watch your show? I'm like, I can't watch 24. That will hype me up. I'll be hitting bats in the face. Yeah. So we watched something else instead. But.
Yeah. We tend to watch an episode. But so we started Stranger Things.
The new one?
Yeah.
What's that like?
It's just, it's intense. It feels like it shifted genres. Like it's just... It feels like horror. I mean, there was sort of
that first one was like strange, supernatural suspense.
Yes. This feels like horror. Okay. I mean, like spiders coming out of people's faces and the like bones breaking. And so we actually watched 1 or 2 of them and then like we stopped. We haven't watched one for a while. Then we like started part of 1 and then we got interrupted. We're just not... I don't know.
Captivated.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like, I've never read Harry Potter, but I was told that they got kind of increasingly dark and intense, or at least the movies did. And maybe that was in order to follow their audience as they aged.
Could be.
I wonder if it's something like that.
It could be.
Have you seen it?
The new season?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I think I agree that it's just, to me, the paranormal stuff just seems really gratuitous too, as well as being way more like graphic and like creepy for no reason. Yeah. But it's also getting like, I'm more than halfway through it and it's just boring.
Is it?
Like there's no like through lines that are really interesting and there's too many separate plots going on that you're not really interested in.
Interesting. That's interesting that you didn't find it interesting. The first season was terrific. Yes. I remember watching that and just being like...
And it's so nostalgic. There's so much nostalgia for the 80s and
Do you know that I got to take your son and my son to this place in Pittsburgh? There's a pinball machine place. They call it a pinball museum. Yeah. So there's pinball machines and arcade machines. There's about over 400 or 500 machines in there, like the old Mortal Kombat, Shinobi, all that stuff.
Asher would love that.
Oh, good. We should do it.
You
pay $25 and they give you 2 hours, and you play all of it.
Asher loves vintage things. He laments his big fear is that like Tesla and electric cars are going to take over. Because he like so loves vintage old muscle cars and old diesel engines and
what a cool kid. Yeah. It's funny how kids just attracted to different things without you putting anything into them to do that.
At all.
Like my son Peter can stand and look at a beehive for 20 minutes and then he'll go and pick blueberries and he's just always outside. And I wish I could say I tried to inculcate that in him.
It's like
no, just him.
That's Asher. Asher's like, he loves old, and even t-shirts and stuff like he wears. He says, Dad, I like the old stuff. I like stuff that looks older.
Why, isn't that interesting? Because it's not nostalgia. So I wonder what it is.
It's just a vintage personality. You know? You guys are doing bees.
Bees. Yep, we just extracted 22 pounds of honey.
Wow.
It's so cool. You know what's funny? When they say on honey labels, unfiltered, that's not true. I don't know how that could possibly be true.
It's got so much wax in it.
It's the wax. It's also like bee stingers. Yeah. Like unless you want to,
delicious.
You have to filter.
You want some bee stingers?
This honey really makes my tongue feel numb. Yeah. It's really great.
It's giving me a fear of water.
We're doing. We have bees as well.
Oh,
but our bees absconded over the winter. They left, and. I guess this happens occasionally. And anyway, so the Hans have some beehives down the street, and I think maybe our bees absconded to their hive.
Bloody Scott.
So I'm going to march on Scott's yard and take what's mine.
Door.
Yeah. I believe you have something of mine, good sir.
Or just show up in the back and try to collect them without them noticing.
One time when I was at Baylor, so Ken Starr was the president of Baylor when I was there. So he wrote the Starr Report when Clinton was president, all about. Okay, so, and the president has a house on campus at Baylor. Like there's a big, beautiful sort of mansion where the president lives. And I was playing Frisbee on campus and my Frisbee went over into his backyard. And so I had to knock on the door and his wife answers. And I said, I'm so sorry, man. My Frisbee's in your backyard. And she was like, Ken, right? So Ken comes and he's like, oh, come on back. Okay. Yeah, great. He's like, I will get it. He said, sorry, we just had a party for Condoleezza Rice here. We were hosting her. We're just wrapping up. So please forgive the mess. He's like, would you like some sopapilla? Would you like and I was like, no.
What is that?
It's like a Mexican
it's like a
puffed
deep
pastry.
pocket, and then there's honey in it.
Oh,
so here's Ken Starr going, drizzle some honey on it. And I was like, no, seriously, come here, just drizzle some honey on it. It's so delicious. And I was like, thank you, Ken. I'll just grab my Frisbee, sir. Like so I walked out of the house with a Frisbee and a honey drip sopapilla. The honey made me think of that. The time Ken Starr served me honey.
You know, you just said ashes into engines and things like that. Do you think that, like, I find myself pushing against my kids when they bring up university, as opposed to encouraging them. I'm like, why would you do that? Yeah, like I'm open to it.
No,
but
that's
why would you do it?
For me, you know, it has been a big, it's been a big growth area for me to begin to consider letting go of the idea that everyone has to go to college.
You mentioned in our last show.
Last time, just the way I was brought up, and it just felt really important. Education felt really, really important. And now I have a son who loves, and has a genuinely sort of mechanical mind. Did
I tell you he fixed my lawnmower?
Did he fix your lawnmower?
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
The problem is, okay.
Have you checked the carburetor? You're like, he bought this mini bike recently, like
That's
a
so
little
cool.
motor, and it worked. It worked. It was brand new. And he immediately goes out to the garage and takes it apart and starts like revamping the throttle and fixing the clutch and opening up the carburetor so it goes faster and trying to locate the governor so that he can, you know, take off the speed limit on it. And I mean, his mind is just, and so I've really thought recently, like maybe he should go to vocational, like Jefferson County has a VOTEC. And we're thinking about when he turns 16, letting him go to VOTEC and learn like small engine repair or mechanics, or because the truth is, I think for him to go to college, I would just kill something in him. I mean, it would just be a grind, and I think it wouldn't be good for him right away anyway. I get the sense that for him to be able to like work with his hands and fix engines, and then maybe go back down the road if he wants, but
what's changed here, right? Because my parents were always harping on getting a good education, and fair enough, you know, there's obviously virtue to that, but
sure.
I don't think it's just me, and I don't think it's just coming from a place of, well, I'm Catholic and that's not the most important thing. I think there are a lot of people of all different walks of life who are wondering why they would send their kids to college.
I think part of it is, I mean, there's a couple factors, right? The sort of convergent streams. One of them is certainly the price tag of college. I mean, college has become so expensive. I mean, to go to college, you're talking about taking out tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? That's insane. So to hold that kind of debt seems ridiculous to most people now. And I can see why.
And you can also probably make as much money by becoming a successful YouTuber or a successful whatever you are online.
I mean, think about what college used to be, right? College used to be the place where you had to go because the people that had the knowledge were there. So there was a time when books and information was limited to certain places. And so people would get that information and they would hold it, and you had to go to where they were to learn that information. With the advent of the internet, all of the information that every one of my college professors has, I now have access to. So the question is, what do I go to them for? Like, if I have access to all the same information, part of what I'm going there for is maybe the presentation of that, how it's presented to me. I could read it in a book myself, teach it to myself, or look at it on Khan Academy. I mean, you could learn math on Khan Academy. You can learn philosophy on, like, there's all of these places you can go now to get that information. Part of what you're paying for is the production value of it. Colleges give you a certain production value, and they give you a place to potentially mature emotionally. And so I think that's what.
And it also kind of forces you perhaps to receive it in a disciplined manner. Like, I could learn everything in the world, but I'm not going to because I'm a lazy bum who just wants to watch 24.
Yeah. They structure it for you.
They structure it for you.
So the presentation.
But then the question is, you know, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Is that what I want to pay to have a structured?
Well, to go to Franciscan, it is.
That's right.
Because
Dave,
I love my job, Father Dave.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I just think. So that's part of it, right? I think the other thing that's changed too is colleges now, I mean, there's concerns about ideology. And what's being taught and whether you're being taught to think freely, like a liberal arts education where you're being taught how to think well, or whether or not you're being sort of indoctrinated into a certain way of thinking. And so you have the debt concern, you've got the concern about are you being taught how to think or what to think? And so those two things, and then you have access to all the information anyway. Those three things seem to me to say like, well, maybe we don't need to go to college, and maybe we don't need to.
I think as a parent, the only option I would give my kids if they wanted me to help with it would be a good Catholic school, like Wyoming Catholic or Thomas Aquinas or Franciscan. Yeah. And I'd be happy that they'd be in a community, presumably of like-minded people who are trying to be holy as well as educated. But
yeah, I think that's what, I mean, a lot of times what we offer now isn't access to information that they don't have. It's Franciscan, we're providing them a culture, we're providing them a community in which they can try to grow in multiple dimensions of their humanity. So spiritually, emotionally, we're trying to create a place where they can deepen their Catholic identity, but it's not just about the information anymore. I mean,
it's going to be interesting to see how Catholic schools fare over the next 10 years or so, because this sort of leftist, or whatever you want to call it, illusion ideology seems to permeate everything. And unless you take a super hard stand against it, it's funny, that super hard stance can be seen as like, why are you being so like reactionary? It's like, well, if I don't, this all goes away. But I would imagine there's going to be schools that we would consider good Catholic schools right now that will begin to give into some of this stuff.
I think a lot of it's sort of some of it's a slow trickle. Some of it's, you try to engage it in a way that maybe you say, look, we're going to engage it. We're going to open up our doors. We're going to try to dialogue with this. And there's something to that. There's something about, I do think sometimes Catholics get very, it's as if we're afraid that the truth we hold can't stand, or it's if we're afraid that sort of the truth doesn't have the weight that we think it, like we should be confident in the truths we hold. And so in that way, we don't have to be reactionary because I know what we've got. I know the history, I know the patrimony, I know the, but at the same time, I think there needs to be some sort of, a thoughtful sort of preparation, or, like some of the gender ideology stuff. I think universities have to begin to think about how can you make sure that you're in a position not to be sort of sued or brought to task over the Catholic teaching on sex and gender. And so there has to be a preparation, but I don't think we should feel afraid. I think we should have a confidence that, one, the gates of hell will not prevail. It's the promise that we have. We still need to be thoughtful. That's not an excuse to just be sort of blasé about things, but two, that we have a deep trust and confidence in the truths we hold. And so I don't have to...
so there's like a middle ground between...
I think so.
There's a middle ground between just calling all of our ideological opponents idiots and not engaging with them, and then just allowing them to run roughshod. The problem is, though, I mean, there are certain things that are so absurd that it's better to cast them out as demons than to engage them.
And I do think, too, I mean, you also have, I think there's a distinction here between sort of the activism arm of these movements and then the folks who are caught up in it. And so you have students who are struggling and wrestling with some difficult issues. It's one thing to engage them. They're not activists, right? They're not just trying to push some agenda or ideology. They're really sort of struggling or wrestling or maybe misguided, but you can engage them. That's different than trying to engage somebody who's just an activist and wants to ram something down your throat, wants to be provocative, wants to, elicit some sort of negative response from you. They're baiting you. So I think we have to be mindful too, who are we engaging? Are we engaging the activists, or are we engaging the real seekers? I think we should always engage the seekers, engage those who are struggling, engage those who are lost, engage those who are open. But something like the activists, that's just a recipe for for disaster, I think. So I think those folks, you have to safeguard against that kind of stuff.
Are you seeing this a lot in your teaching of psychology? And
no, not.
I don't
not
mean them
here.
personally.
Yeah,
I just mean the topics. Are they beginning to be addressed?
Yeah, these are big topics. I mean, the particularly the gender stuff, and gender dysphoria, transgenderism. These are big topics, and it's making its way in psychology, certainly. So the beauty is I sort of I'm not a member of any of the big psych organizations like APA or so. One of the best talks I've ever heard on gender dysphoria and transgenderism was by a guy named Dr. Andrew Sodergren. He's out at Rural Woods in Cincinnati. They have a psychology arm. So they do like K through 12 TOB curriculum and training for educators, but then they have a whole arm of psychologists just to help people heal. So sort of the whole person. He gave a talk at the Catholic Psychotherapy Association on transgenderism it was beautiful. I mean, he really threaded the needle, which is like, look, gender dysphoria is a thing. We see it. But the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones,
double mastectomies.
These aren't the solution. You can engage in psychosocial treatments. There are treatments out there. And oftentimes they can be effective. And he gave this really thoughtful approach to not only the treatment of it, but then how do we handle people who are struggling?
This is why we really have to face these social issues with the 2,000 years of tradition and the wisdom of the scriptures, as opposed to relying on a particular political party.
Yes, Matt, agreed.
Because, I mean, if you look at the series of, let's just keep it at sexual sins for now, it's like, okay, the left accepts divorce, contraception, all these things. But so does the right. It's like the right keeps getting pushed back. So you even have Donald Trump in being open to transgenderism things, and I think it's insanity.
I heard,
but then just real quick, then the thing is like, so if I'm identifying myself as the political right, then the only battle to fight now is transgenderism, because it seems like there's a good majority of those on the political right who are pushing back against it. And even not that, maybe they're only against the indoctrination of children, which is true, but that's the only thing I'm fighting. Whereas I'm now okay with so-called gay marriage, and I'm now okay with pornography and contraception, no fault divorce. I'm okay with all those things. So it's then I'm rabid about this one thing my political side is debating. So I'm not taking a holistic view of all the issues, and I'm not doing it with the charity Christ is calling me to engage it with.
Matt, I think who Damon Owens said a while back, and I thought this was one of the truer things I've ever heard. He said, our political friends should be confounded by us. That our approach to this should be, because we should have a Catholic position, which does transcend either political party. And look, certain issues conservatives are better on, certain issues Democrats are better on. And so I think it's, and people don't like to say that. I mean, look, I don't trust anybody. When I'm talking to somebody politically, I utterly have no trust for them if they can't point out at least one negative thing that the person who they support has done. If they're like if you can, if Barack Obama is the worst human being you've ever met, you're a conservative. If you can't point out one troubling thing that Donald Trump has done, like, I just think you're an ideologue.
You are,
right? And so, and if you can't point out one good thing that Barack Obama has done, and maybe it's not huge, but one good thing. So if you can't find one good thing in your opponent and one negative thing in the person you support,
we do this with Pope Francis. I mean, even I feel like reluctant to talk about the things he says that are good. But that's usually because the things that he says are good are like, well, of course he should be saying that. But what is that weird tension in me that I feel a little nervous about praising, him for saying that? It's almost like we become so cynical of a particular individual that any good they do is only like, if I bring light to that, then I'm going to bring light to everything he's saying, and there's no room for nuance.
I think there's a deep fear there that either people outside will misinterpret me as they'll think that I support everything he says then. Or it somehow it everything he says stands in the shadow of the praise I've given him. So that means that I must be praising all the things he's done. And I don't think that's the case. I think we have to politically we have to be able to acknowledge. Well, to your point, we should be Catholic, and I think that means that there are times when I point out something that a Democrat or a Democratic candidate or a Democratic, party has done that, I say that's good. I think it's good. It's compassionate. It's true. It's, and then there's times when we should be able to critique what conservatives are doing and praise we should confound our political friends. Our friends who are merely political should say, so wait, what are you? And you say, well, I'm Catholic, which means I have 2,000 years of tradition, philosophy, theology, social doctrine behind me that shapes how I see this.
I would imagine most Catholics who consider themselves sort of politically up on what's going on are probably more educated on social doctrine by Ben Shapiro than they are the history of the church 100%. And what popes have had to say, including myself.
Right. And so, I think that's right. And I think we do ourselves a disservice and we do the conversation.
But you know what it is,
though?
When the house is on fire, it just feels like there's really actually is no room for nuance.
I know.
That's just what it feels like, doesn't it? Like things are on fire. People are saying, cut your breasts off. Nancy Pelosi is saying being a drag queen is what America's all about. And you're like, okay, this is freaking nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's right. It is nuts. It is. So it's like, is there any room when the country's collapsing?
I also, though, I don't follow Jordan Peterson. I don't have any sort of personal beef against the guy, but I don't really follow anyway. I just don't have a ton of time to do this sort of thing. So, but I think one thing I've heard that people say he says is something like, look, like before you're out protesting and to make your bed, go back to your room. Is your bedroom clean? Is your bed made? If it's not, you don't belong out in the streets protesting. And I feel sometimes that way about people get so caught up in a sphere of influence that they don't, an area where they have no sphere of influence. So there's very little I can do about Nancy Pelosi and what she thinks right now. And there's very little I can do from posting against my, liberal friends on Facebook is not changing the course of America. As far as I can tell, it actually only sort of plays right into the very thing that's contributing to the downfall of America. And so, I think if we focused really on our sphere of influence, if I can do things in Steubenville, me shouting things on Facebook about what's happening in DC. Now I can vote. Voting's important, but how many people spend hours on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, going on and on
so
about...
So why do we do that?
Yeah, because it feels like we're doing something.
Is that what it is? I think you're right.
I think it feels like...
Because I think every human being would agree with what you just said in America. They would all be like, yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. Would they?
Fix your town. I don't know. Fix your town. Maybe we'll find out. Put it in the comments. Some people will be probably unhappy with it.
But then we can't get away from the fact that these huge propaganda... waves have changed the way people think. I think if you were to ask most Americans on the street right now, can a man be a woman? They'd probably say, well, people can be what they want to be. Yeah. So then we can't get away from the fact that there's been a tremendous amount of influence online that has changed things.
So maybe. So very few people have the kind of, look, this is why I think a lot of people turn to the Ben Shapiros and the Matt Walshes and they are folks that have big names and they have the big audience to kind of push back against. And look,
you with your 500 Facebook followers,
it's like you don't, right? And so let those people who have that sphere of influence do their work. Yeah, you do your work, and your work is probably humbler than that. And your work, you probably don't need to be trolling the com boxes of Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro, making sure you take down every liberal who. I'd be really curious. I'd be curious, what your followers say, what anyone who says, how many people have actually changed their opinion about any topic based on something somebody has said to them on Facebook. I mean, it's a curious thing. If
I had a professor who his mantra was no one's ever changed their opinion online. Period.
It seems
which I think is
that's not true.
That's not true. But
it's getting at something that's perhaps more true than we think it is.
Right. I mean, the people who do So I'm part of, I bet you probably are too. It's like the Thomism discussion group or something.
I'm not part of it.
Okay.
No.
So there's this Thomism discussion group on Facebook. Very elite group. You have to know someone to get in, Matt.
If you're on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't even know the password. I am, but someone runs it. I don't know.
Okay, that's so funny. And I'm joking. It's just like you asked to be invited. And but here's a group of people that don't agree on everything, but the discussion is dialectic. They're really aimed at like sifting through points and trying to get at truth. And I've seen people on there say things like, well, I've really changed my mind on this, or I've changed my position on this. I used to think this, but now I think. That's the kind of place or environment where I think people sincerely are pursuing the truth of a thing. But when you post on, Uncle Ray or Aunt Tina's Facebook, like, well, let me tell you about Joe Biden, or here's the thing about, they're not like, oh, okay, right? Like, I mean,
you're not in a place to be receptive on those platforms.
Those are
That's
the places
not what they're for.
Right.
They're for clicks and quick stimulation.
Yeah. And those are the places where I think getting to know Uncle Ray and Aunt Tina and having coffee and calling them, like if you only see him every Thanksgiving, like what's the likelihood that you have an inroad to really help him change his mind about something? Anyway, all that to say, I think you're right about this big problem. It's a huge problem, right and left too. I mean, I think there's stuff on the right that we don't often acknowledge. That's sort of this alternative political propaganda machine that can be problematic. But it's why Catholics should be like, we should have a place where we can think stuff through thoughtfully and critically and take what's true, plunder Egypt's gold, like take what's true from each, hold it, retain it, affirm it, but distance ourselves from what's not. And I think the fear is, I've had this fear when I'm talking to conservative friends. If I say something about immigration, I think like we need to have more compassionate immigration policies, or we need to figure something out for what's happening at the border, because, my real conservative friends will say something like, well, the thing at the border is not even a crisis. That's just what they want you to believe. Okay.
You mean your liberal friends would say that, right? I don't think any conservative would say there's no crisis on the border.
Yeah. So they say like they're hyping it up. So when they show pictures of like kids in cages or
that kind of
they'll
stuff.
say like, no, that's not really happening. That's what they want you to think. That's what, but the fear is that your conservative friends will say, you're really a liberal. Oh, you're really and I think like there's ways of thinking about immigration from a thoughtful Catholic perspective. I think there's ways of thinking about like money and taxes and retirement and how we treat the elderly and healthcare. And I think there are ways, these are areas for like good, thoughtful discussion, but they just get bludgeoned with like political talking points.
That's right. When I lived in Australia as a teenager, we had these things called detention centers. And when people would illegally come to Australia, they were put in these facilities. And these were out in the outback, so in the desert, and they were barbed wire, and it was a terrible thing. It's
problematic for even how we treat people
very
who
problematic,
are breaking the law.
But I remember when a priest said to me, and this never left me, he said, because you just have to look up the images. I mean, they're kind of scary. I mean, and again, as soon as you say something like that, it's like, well, the only other answer is just like let them all in illegally. It's like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying maybe that there's some other option.
Exactly.
But he said to me, like, if they were Englishmen, like if they were just men, farmers from England who showed up, would we be okay with them in cages? Like, shit, I realized, no way.
Exactly. I know.
It's because they're Muslim or brown or they don't look like us.
Yeah. And look, we have to, we do have sort of affinity for likeness, and there's something interesting here. I think part of what Christ does is, and part of why Christ is so challenging, is he sort of breaks the Jews out of just focusing on Jews and out of their tribe, and he opens things up to the Gentiles and slave and free and woman and man, and he breaks us out of these sort of affinities we have for likeness.
Which is in a way it's in a way unnatural. Like in a way it's completely natural that you should be for your community, and that your community has particular markers that identify them as such.
Yeah. And
Catholics do it with scapulas. Oh, you want a mine?
Or
you're a real Catholic.
Get your De Montfort bracelet. Right. If you don't have that, it's like, So I think, I just think we could have a higher level of political discourse if we knew our Catholic faith and our Catholic social doctrine better. But again, what we have is we have people who, and very few of us have time to do that. And
that's the other thing I was going to say.
So Ben Shapiro is boiling stuff down, and it's like, it's intuitively closer to what I probably would believe than the alternative. Yeah, that's it.
Exodus 90. You've heard of them, haven't you, Neil?
I have.
Well, the guys behind Exodus 90 have started Exodus 21. They're calling it a 21-day restart. So for 21 days, you, along with the friends you invite, pray and read through the first 2 chapters of Corinthians while practicing disciplines such as 20 minutes of prayer every day, abstaining from unnecessary screen time, that doesn't include Pints with Aquinas, obviously, abstaining from meat on Fridays, and fasting until 4 p.m. on each weekday. You can take this shorter opportunity to introduce your brothers, cousins, co-workers, fellow parishioners, and even your neighbors. It'd be kind of weird if you didn't know them. Just assume they're Catholic and want to torture themselves for 21 days on how to live like Christ and prepare them for Exodus 90 in January. So check it out. Go to exodus90.com/Matt, exodus90.com/Matt to get started. I did Exodus 90 once and I lived like a boss monster for the first 31 days and then failed miserably. So Exodus 21 sounds super doable.
You would have done great at this, yeah.
I would have crushed it, although probably because 21 days was the goal, I would have like faded out around the 11th day. I don't know. Exodus90.com/Matt. Go check them out to get started. People who have done it just says it really rejuvenates their prayer life and helps them. Exodus90.com/Matt. Link is in the description. Click it and check them out.
And that starts January?
You can start whenever.
Oh.
So Exodus 90 is going to be starting in January. So this 21 day can be like a little test.
I see.
But honestly, for me, I just do the 21 days. So you can do it whenever you want. Go check it out right now, exodus90.com/Matt. It's a great way to grow in friendship too with people in your community. Check them out. Also want to say thank you to Hallow. Sorry. Hallow is a really great prayer and meditation app. It is just phenomenal. Whenever I talk about Hallow, I'm always impressed that a Catholic group has been able to create one of the greatest apps in the history and catalog of current apps. It has sleep stories. It allows you to pray the rosary. It even has Mark Wahlberg praying the rosary. So you can pray with Mark Wahlberg, which is pretty cool. I just got back from a trip to Africa and I'm really bad at sleeping on airplanes. So I listened to sleep stories and people read the Bible to you and stuff like that. It's really, really good. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. And also, when you sign up on the website, you get 3 months for free. So if you just download the app and sign up that way, you got to start paying monthly. But you can try it for 3 months. That's a long time. And you can see if you like it. And if you don't, you can cancel and you won't be charged a cent. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. Finally, I want to say a massive thanks to everybody who's beginning to support us on Locals. Locals is a free speech platform that will enable me to continue putting out content long after YouTube may choose to ban us or suspend us, as Twitter did recently. So go to mattfradd.com/locals, right?
Link is in the description.
Link is in the description. And follow us there. We have morning podcasts. You get access to monthly spiritual direction with Father Gregory Pine. We release monthly audio books. For the month of August, we're going to be releasing, what's it called? Teresa of Avila's...
The Interior Castle.
Interior Castle. Yep. We just commissioned a study on the 5 ways of Thomas Aquinas by Dr. Ed Fazer. Hard man to get a hold of, but he has recorded the videos. They're fantastic. So just go support us there. And one more thing that we're doing is we've put together an ink on paper newsletter. It's phenomenal. I'm not joking. Isn't it? You saw it. Are you actually impressed?
No, I really like it. Yeah.
It would be awkward if you said no.
It's got a crossword too.
It's got a Catholic crossword puzzle and poetry and articles from theologians. And this will, when you get this, for free, by the way, we even pay shipping. So if you live in Namibia or Yemen or Australia, China, wherever, we ship it to you for free whenever these newsletters come out. And you can put your phone in a drawer or set it on fire, sit out on the back porch with a whiskey or coffee and just unplug. And just go to mattfradd.locals.com and join us over there.
That's not extra. You just sign up for the local support.
Yeah.
And then
so what you got to do is once you sign up as an annual local supporter, that's how you get the thing. You can support us monthly, but if you support us annually, you get access to this newsletter. And we just ask that you put your address in. So once you sign up to Locals, there's something pinned to the top. Click through that, put in your address, and we'll just start sending them to you. Check it out, mattfradd.locals.com. Also, you don't actually have to pay to watch a lot of the content that we put out over on Locals. So download our Locals app. It's on iOS and Android, and start following us over there because it's an amazing community of Catholics all around the world that are supporting each other. It's not just me posting, it's also the supporters posting. I think people will really, really dig it. So mattfradd.locals.com. Check it out. Thank you very much. Final word, it'd be great if you subscribed. It'd be great if you then rang that bell button, because right now we have a 100,000 trophy over here. We're over 250,000, which sounds more than 250,000, which is why I phrase it that way. And once we get 1 million subscribers, they will give us another plaque, at which point I will quit the YouTube channel, sell my house, and go live in the forest somewhere.
And read newspapers, ink on paper newspapers.
Yeah, and just read all of the newspapers that I've put together. Thanks so much. It's also a lack of epistemic humility too, isn't it? It's like, it's no longer okay to be like, I just don't know if I have an opinion yet. I don't know enough. You must. You must post about it on Facebook or Instagram.
You have to have an opinion about things. And if you don't, by the way, that actually signals that you might be
a sympathizer.
Yeah. And I just think there are so many things. One of my good friends at the university does epistemology. He's a philosopher. And I've really learned from him and some others who I respect up in the philosophy department up there that it's okay to say, you know what, that's a good point. I don't know much about it. I actually don't know. I'm not sure. And that can actually be the right response a lot of times.
I mean, that's the response that we would kill for our teenage sons to give, because we would be like, oh, wow, humility.
I know.
This is so much strength here. Like, my son is infallible, just like I was when I was his age. I knew everything about everything. And if you said, are you like that? I'd be like, no.
No.
So I even knew that
Yeah, I was certain.
I knew everything.
Certainty. Right.
But in actuality, if my son was to say, I don't know enough about it, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you're growing up.
I know.
And yet we look at ourselves and we think, well, I can't say that.
I know. We have to have opinions about everything. And we're afraid not to. Yeah. I think fear motivates so much of our lives, Matt. Fear. Fear of not getting what we want. Fear of not getting what we think we need. And that includes the opinions and praise and affirmation of others and people in our community. And I think we get motivated by fear so often.
I was talking with Father John Burns last week, and he said that the reason we fear, he's trying to understand it, right? Like, 'cause he agrees with you, and he says that maybe it's this fear of being alone. Like, ultimately, that's the ultimate fear.
Fundamental fear.
Because I said, well, yeah, I guess like I fear that maybe I'm not lovable, you know, like I said that. And he's like, okay, but what's the consequence of that? I'm like, yeah, that I'll be alone.
I'll be alone. Yeah, there's something about that if we're social creatures. I do think I've been trying to work it out. It might be too extreme. I think I haven't thought about it enough, so I don't know. But I sort of want to posit that I think the two fundamental motives are like fear and love. And so oftentimes, even when you take sort of the capital vices, I think you can boil them down to some sort of fear. I'm afraid I'm not going to get the sexual pleasure I desire. I'm afraid I'm not going to get the esteem I desire, pride, right? I'm afraid I'm not going to get the esteem from others I desire. I'm afraid I'm not going to have the power over others I want. I'm afraid I'm not going to, it seems to me that you could maybe boil all of it down to some fear. And so we're either motivated by fear or love, and fear always turns us in upon ourselves, always. Yeah. To some extent, when I'm afraid, the focal point is always me. And so the problem with that is now I have to control and manipulate the world to get these fears, to alleviate the fear, right? To alleviate the fear, I have to control and manipulate the world. And that leaves me constantly feeling anxious, constantly feeling overwhelmed, constantly feeling, and how easily you hurt or harm me when you touch one of those fears, right?
Yeah.
Where I can be motivated by love, which is Christ-centered and then others-centered.
Here's something I read this morning.
Yeah, please.
Have no doubt that it is in the degree to which you change yourself that everything around you will change. A new world will not be remade except if you become yourself this new man of whom St. Paul speaks, created according to God in justice and holiness and truth. If you are just, you radiate justice. If you're merciful, you radiate mercy, etc., etc.
That is... So I have this book coming out. It actually seems like... it's funny. When you're reading that, anytime I read Father Jacques Philippe, I'm like, man, did I just steal my whole book? Is the whole, like, but there's nothing new under the sun, right? But I have a chapter in there that basically says the problem is you.
Just real quick, as we begin to talk about your book, I want to let people know that we've got a link in the description below
Yeah.
This just came out. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Front cover's
thanks.
gorgeous
It's
too.
beautiful. I feel so excited.
Is this your first book?
Yeah.
So just superficially before we go deep,
Yes.
that's a big deal, isn't it? Especially with your first
Matt,
book.
if
You want
you-
it to look beautiful because a publisher can ruin your book.
Yeah. It feels like a big deal. Like I was never supposed to write a book. And the way it unfolded, it came out of a talk I was asked to give, and it just, the idea started germinating, and Emmaus Road was, I sent them a chapter and they said, yeah, go for it. And
Jacques Philippe, Fear, Love.
yeah. I was never supposed to write a book. And so for me to, when they sent me the cover, I almost wanted to I felt so like proud. I felt so happy. And a huge part of it, and I don't mean this in a trite way, God has done so much in my life, man, to bring me to a place where I could have a book. But for me, the whole purpose of the book is to continue what was such a healing point for me, which was love and serve others. And that's how I got better, was radically shifting away from being self-focused to trying to be of maximum service to God and others. And so the book is that. The book is if it's helpful for you, keep it, use it. If it's not, burn it, use it as a window jamb to keep cool air coming in. It's solely intended to be helpful. That's it. Like to serve, like sweeping away the obstacles and barriers from you hearing and following the call of God in your life. And if it does that, like that's the purpose. And so what God has done, man, to get to that point, the book isn't about me. And it was written in a spirit of being for others and about others and trying to free others. And I think as long as I stay in that place, God continues to do amazing things. It's when I subtly start to turn toward myself that the fear creeps back, the anxiety, the loneliness, the depression, because I got to control it all to make sure life goes the way I need it to go.
You are absolutely speaking to me right now. I did this all weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know why. There was nothing obvious that happened. I just found myself irritated and irritable.
Oh, dude.
My kids are going through this phase where they make things, they make, I mean food, so they'll make cookies or they'll make smoothies, granulated sugar everywhere. Doesn't matter how many times I say, happy you can use the stuff in the kitchen. I just need you to clean it up. So what happens is all weekend, I'm like, pick it up. And then I knock over a cup of juice. Oh my gosh, half friggin'. And so this is me all weekend, tight. What is that?
Yeah. So that's what I think part of what I posit in the book is that a whole bunch of our life's problems are of our own making. So like I'm the problem. So what happens is I set up expectations. I go into situations with expectations, with fear, with greed, with self-seeking, and when I go into a situation with those defects of character at play, I set you up to make my life miserable, right? Because now all you have to do is leave some sugar on the counter, and you've just blasted my expectation of what a good clean house should look like. Or you've just I come in, here's what I want. I work hard. I want to rest and relax. I've got my motives, right? Self-seeking. Here's what I want. I'm going to come home. I'm going to just curl up on the couch, watch some YouTube, relax. I've worked hard all week. I just want to scroll my phone. And now all of a sudden the kitchen's dirty and you're jeopardizing my peace. What we do when we go into situations with these defects at play is we give control of our peace to others and to the world. So now I'm a total puppet. Like if I need your praise and affirmation to be happy, I'm a puppet to you. If I come in here with fear, if I come in here with self-seeking, if I come in here, not only do I have to manipulate and control people and situations, but now I have to try to find a way to make sure that you do what I need you to do so that I can stay peaceful and happy and get what I want, get what I think I need. But that's one exhausting. So in the book, I call these self-preservation.
Not to mention for everybody else in my life, the poor bastards.
Right. I mean, and then by the way, I harm people, right? I harm all these relationships. And then I have this expectation that people should still be kind, loving, and respectful to me. So then tomorrow when I wake up and the kids are kind of standoffish with me, I think, freaking, how dare they? How dare?
Oh
now, I've spent the whole
gosh.
weekend yelling at them, being miserable, fussing.
Yeah. And then I still expect that they treat me like
yeah,
I'm
is
Christ.
this not a problem of my own making?
Ha.
Isn't this a Matt problem and not a kid? Like, the kids are being who the kids are.
So
it doesn't mean I can't.
freaking good.
Right? It doesn't mean I can't try. It doesn't- obviously, I do this with my guys. I'd like you to clean up the kitchen, guys. I'd like you. But one, how I do it, and two, sometimes checking my motives and my expectations. Are they reasonable? Like, I've got a 10-month-old, a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I want a house that looks like it comes out of Joanna Gaines, like Magnolia Market. Like that, I'm setting my kids up to make me angry. So when my 3-year-old does what a 3-year-old does, well, isn't the problem that I go in with this expectation that she should be able to perfectly toddle around and never actually touch or destroy her? No, that's crazy. It's a setup. It's a setup. I set myself up to be hurt. So I do this whole thing in the book where I think we have primary wounds and secondary wounds. And I think primary wounds are where we fail to be loved the way we were created to be loved. But I think secondary wounds are when we set ourselves up to be hurt by others. And I think a lot of our anxiety, our fear, our irritability, our unhappiness is actually because we set ourselves up to be hurt by others. I go into situations with these defects of character, full bore. And then when somebody touches it, I go, I can't believe you hurt me like that. I go into the classroom and I want everyone to like me. Everyone. I need everyone to like me. Right? Self-centered, self-seeking. I need all my students to like me. When I read an evaluation at the end of the semester, this guy's boring, he rambles too much, he talks too much, just the rage, oh my, how could they? Do they even know? Let me tell you about them, right? Then the self-justification comes out, and then do you know how much more peaceful my life would be if I didn't go into that situation needing the affirmation from everybody? So I have to, for me, it's about like shifting my mindset to not what do I need to get out of this situation, but how can I be of maximum service to God and others? And that means that maybe in a classroom of 40, God's calling me to really like speak to 5 or 6 and to be deeply content and happy with that. And then the rest, maybe they don't like me. Maybe they don't like myself. I'm okay with that because my focus isn't on I need to be liked. It's not a self-seeking motive. It's a God-centered motive. So anyway, there's something, that point, speaking of rambling, that point, if I'm the problem, then there's a solution. If the world's the problem, I'm going to be miserable, unhappy, and anxious for the rest of my life. I just am. Because that means Neil's got power of me. You have power of me. My wife. How can I possibly get everything I need out of a world that's big and fast and mixed motives? I can't. I'm going to be really unhappy, anxious, and irritable.
So when you notice yourself slipping into that fear way of acting, orientation, how do you realize it and what do you do?
Yeah. So for me, it's like anytime I have like big feelings. So anger, like deep frustration, fear, like sadness, just like a profound sense of sadness or disconnectedness. My habit now is to look and say, okay, where am I being self-seeking, self-serving? Where am I bringing fear into a situation? And I've gotten, I think, a habit of being able to recognize, and this is what I lay out in the book. I try to like break these terms and definitions down and give you a system for recognizing when you're being motivated by some of these character defects. And then what to do with it. So what I try to do is I try to say, okay, God, this thing, this fear or this desire for more food than I actually need, or this desire to be liked and esteemed, it's getting in the way of me serving you. Because when I'm motivated by self-seeking, I can't do what God wants me to do because I'm too worried about trying to get what I need to get. And so I ask God to remove it. In that moment, I say, God, remove it, take it away from me. so that I can be of service to you. Now direct my thoughts and my intentions to what you would have me do in this moment. So I pause and I try to say, okay, so the granulated sugar, I walk in the kitchen. He said, God, okay, I feel angry. What is it? Now, by the way, it's not all feelings of anger, irritability, sadness, or fear
are unjustified.
What we want to do is we want to be able to identify the ones that are and are appropriate and the ones that aren't and are getting in our way of being of service to God. And so say, okay, God, what is this? What's at play here? Why do I feel so angry by sugar? Some granulated sugar. And oftentimes I can uncover myself something like, well, I work hard, so I expect that the other people while I'm working hard are working hard to make sure that my house is nice when whatever. I tell myself all these stories. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, well, you want me to love and serve you, Lord, to be of maximum service to you and others. Remove my fear, remove my irritability that's preventing me, even if I'm going to teach these kids, even if they need to learn to clean up, I want to do it in a way that's godly, that's Christian. If yelling is making them fearful and intimidated of me isn't the way that God wants me to love and serve them. So even when I need to correct them, I said, God, remove my irritability, remove my anger, so that I can even correct them the way you want me to correct them. Help me figure out what is the image of how I should be correcting them. And then oftentimes it's like, hey guys, I got to be honest. I'm feeling a little frustrated because I've asked you a couple of times and I feel like you're not paying attention to what I'm saying. And as opposed to like,
what the hell?
Yeah. Are you an idiot? Like, how can you not, how many times do there's that approach, which like hurts, harms, and further wounds. Mm-hmm. And then there's like I think the way that actually loves and serves and honors them. And so I'm not advocating for like, we don't correct our kids or
right.
we should never be angry. But even in our anger, we should be angry in a way that doesn't unjustly hurt or harm other people.
I'm going to have you buy this book by the time I'm done.
Yeah.
Listen to this. The spiteful person, which is what we become with the granulated sugar, I mean. The spiteful person starts putting facts together which in reality are totally unrelated in order to make his neighbor's offense seem greater, to put his neighbor in an inexcusable position in order to excuse himself. And then he says, but there are so many excuses to be found for the faults of others. Like, why don't I excuse my sin and then I magnify what I've done well? I said to my wife, I did that for you today. You're welcome. Even just like, you're welcome.
But
when we
her
say that.
slip up is like her smallest slip
hers
up.
Or my kids, it's like, there's no excuse for that.
Dude.
And then what I do is I excuse their virtue. I say things like, well, the only reason he's saying that is because he wants something.
Dude, the stories we tell. I mean, what's actually funny about that is I feel like I say a lot of similar things. He says it so beautifully. It's like this poetry.
Yeah.
I say it like a simple man. Like, I am a simple man. But that's said so beautifully.
Yeah.
But I think the stories we tell, we have to become mindful of whether or not the story I'm telling about myself and others is accurate. Because I can weave together this narrative and I can put together facts that don't go together and I can attribute motives and I can work myself up into who I think you are and why I think you do what you do really quickly. And that can justify a whole bunch of behavior from me toward you. It's all hogwash. It's all like, this is my problem.
But do you ever have a time where you recognize you're living from fear? You say, Lord, take it away, and how can I serve others and serve God? And it's just not that easy. What do you do when it feels like the only option is retreat? Yeah. I got to go. I just, if I don't go, I don't know how to handle this.
So I think that's better than harm. I think that's better than harm.
Yeah.
I think ultimately we should want to be of help and of service. And if we can't help, at least don't do harm. At least mitigate harm, mitigate wronging others unjustly. But I think we also, over time, like, God takes, I think, a developmental perspective on us. Like he's helping us grow and mature spiritually and emotionally. And we start off like babies and we start off like infants. So sometimes my 10-month-old is like too overwhelmed by the environment and we have to step back a little bit. let him rest and recharge and relax. And then we come back in. And next time he can go a little bit longer, right? A little bit. And then he has a little slip and we pull back and we go back in, right? So I think God does something very similar with the spiritual life. And I found two things happen. One is that oftentimes God will give me the grace that I need to be of service and to sort of remove the things that prevent me from serving him. Like when I say, like, God, I want to be of service to you. That's what I want. That's what I desire above all things. And that becomes my sole focus on the day. And so this isn't just like the problem with, I think the book I wrote is, it's like a way of living. It's not just like try these things and then you'll be fine and you can do what you want to do now. It's about a radical conversion to almost having a myopic focus each moment of, God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? How do you want me to be? That's all I care about. Like you, God and God alone, you. So oftentimes when you take that perspective, I think God gives you the grace to do the thing that you're asking very often. Like what father would ask you to do something and not give you what you need to do it?
Yeah.
Hey, Asher, will you mow the lawn for me, buddy? Sure, Dad. Where's the lawnmower? Oh, I don't have one. And there's no gas. And then like, what kind of father would do that? Like, if you're like, I want to serve you, Dad. I want to be of service to you. I want to love. And I want to be of service to others in you. I want to be charitable. Good luck. Figure it out. Like, no, I think but do I still make mistakes and slip up? And yes. And so one of the steps I have in there is making amends. I think it's really important that every time we mess up, we amend it. And I think that amends shouldn't just be like, I'm sorry. An amends should be a change in behavior or an action toward the person that is consistent with the harm you've caused.
Sort of like when a priest gives you a penance, it ought to be...
Yes. So if I'm yelling at my kids, I don't just say, I'm sorry for yelling, guys. My amends is to use like a loving tone of voice, a compassionate tone of voice, even when I'm correcting them next time. That's part of my amends to them, is to change how I approach them. It's consistent with the harm I've done. And I think there's going to be times when I act out of fear. Okay. I go back and I say, guys, I'm really sorry. Or guys, I ruined our ice cream trip because I was just so obsessed with money, or I was so obsessed with financial insecurity, and so I try to then make an amends that's commensurate with the harm I've done. Let's go out for a little treat tonight. And I'm not going to dog you guys about how much ice cream you're eating because I'm so afraid that I don't get paid enough. And I'm going to so my fear can come out in all sorts of ways. I don't always catch it. But at night, if I'm doing an examination of conscience, I note it and I make a point of making an amends for it. I think that's an important part of growing in the spiritual life. It's
providential that I read this chapter today. I really didn't mean to keep picking this up, but it's so important. He says, a notion which is not widespread and which nevertheless is very important is that Jesus, when we ask him with confidence, repairs not only the evil we have done in ourselves, but also the evil we have done around us. Indeed, he has made things right in me, but what about the evil I have done to others, the bad example I have set, the scandal I have given, the good I would have been able to do and did not do, the injustice I committed? He says, use this. This is a prayer. Yes. I would invite everybody right now to say this prayer, because I think often, when you start the work of healing, you're very focused on what people have done to you 100%. And your woundedness and how to interpret that. And that's all important, and not just important, necessary. But then you go, oh God, but I don't know. Have you guys also done terribly crappy things to other people? What do I do with that? Listen to this prayer. Jesus, from this evil also which I have wrought around me, draw forth good. Even I dare to ask you, Jesus, draw a greater good than from it than if I had not done the evil. I ask this humbly in all my smallness, beating my breast and saying mea culpa with a contrite heart, recognizing my fault. I ask it of you with an immense confidence, recognizing your mercy and the limitless price you paid for our redemption. That's... You're going to buy this? I'll buy it for you. Beautiful. So good. Yeah. I believe in love. It's what we're reading from everybody. Unbelievable.
I think I have so many thoughts. That is beautiful. And I think it's true. I think of a couple of things. The first is when we participate. So you made a point that sometimes when we begin to think about healing, we focus on ourselves. Yes, true. I think what oftentimes happens is when we get hurt or wounded by others, I've been calling them self-preservation strategies, but being hurt and wounded, it's painful. We don't like it. And so we adopt ways of being and acting and thinking that are self-preservatory. Like, I don't want to feel the pain of not being smart enough, not being handsome enough, not being cool enough, so I put forward all these ways of being and doing and acting and thinking that prevent me from having to have that wound touched. I think that self-preservation is what sets us up oftentimes to then be hurt by others even further and to hurt others even further, because I'm willing to hurt you at the service of protecting myself. I'm willing to be the guy who's mocking and teasing you and saying hurtful things and gossiping about you because it prevents my own wounds from being touched. So I got to do this to preserve myself. Not feeling lovable. I mean, I think how many people turn to things like pornography use, turn to hooking up, because they just are trying to not have that wound of I'm not lovable, like not be touched. Mm-hmm. And if I can get you to like me, if I can get you to hook up with me, if I can look at these images and imagine in my head that I'm desirable and enough, and we hurt and harm others in an attempt to preserve ourselves. So I think we have to be concerned with, as part of our healing, I think we've only done half of the healing if we look at the harms people have done to us. We have to look at that and ultimately forgive. And then I think a huge part of our healing is looking at the ways we've engaged in self-preservation and how we hurt and harmed others, and we need to make amends for those. And so I love that prayer. I had the opportunity years ago, without getting into detail, I had harmed somebody, and years after I'd sort of harmed them, I owed them an amends, and I'd forgotten about it. I didn't even remember. And I said a prayer. I was working at this coffee shop, and I was just feeling like I wanted to continue to grow spiritually. And I said, God, like, please help me find somebody to make an amends to. Help me to find somebody who I've hurt or harmed. And this person walked in the door of the coffee shop. I hadn't seen them in years. And my stomach turned. It was crazy. It was the same night I said the prayer. And I pulled this person aside and I said, look, I did this thing, and I was selfish and I was self-seeking, and I know I hurt you. And I want you to know that if there's anything I can do to make right that wrong, I'm willing to do it. And this person burst into tears. And that moment for me was really powerful, because I realized that God had given me the great grace of being able to participate in the healing of that person, despite the fact that I was the one who had wounded them. It felt like he gave me the tremendous gift of participating in their healing when he didn't need to give that to me. But I find that that's oftentimes true. When we go back and make amends, we get to participate in the healing of the people we've hurt or harmed. Not always, but often. But how often does God use our wounds? St. Paul has this thorn in the flesh, and he asks God to remove it, and God doesn't remove it. And I think sometimes God leaves our wounds, but he redeems them. And what I mean is he sort of buys them back to himself, and he says, okay, I'm going to use these in my service now. So often many of us structure our lives in ways to not have our thorns touched. I'm afraid I'm not lovable. I'm afraid I'm not likable. I'm afraid of being thought stupid, and so I have to navigate my world so that people and places don't touch my thorns. And there's no freedom in that. I think what God oftentimes does is he leaves the thorn, but he draws us into places and spaces where he uses our wound to bring healing to others. He uses our wound as part of his healing and salvific mission. I mean, I think about you, Matt. I don't know a ton of your story, but I certainly know that some of the stuff around pornography.
For sure.
I mean, think about.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah,
I was looking at porn when I was 8.
Yeah, look at this.
And
there's a wound.
Glory to Jesus Christ that he would use that to his glory.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like he buys it for himself. Right? When we give ourselves to him totally, he says, okay, I'm going to take, even if you still struggle with lust or with, right, he'll take that wound and he'll say, okay, yeah, but I'm going to use that so that when you meet that guy who's down and out, or that teenager emails you, or that dad who's been married for 35 years emails you and says, look, I'm struggling, you can say, I get it. Heck yeah, I get it. and here's what I'm going to show you has been helpful to me. That he uses our wounds in his service if we allow him. But that means that we can't hold on to them, and we can't be engaged in self-preservation. Because if I'm engaged in self-preservation, I'm not giving them to the Lord to use how he sees fit. And so, man, this idea that God can actually take our hurts and harms, the things we've done to others, he can take our wounds and he can use them to bring about even greater healing if I allow him, if I'm willing to participate in that.
Because I think most Christians would say, yeah, our Lord is powerful enough that he can bring healing to the wounds I've inflicted through my own selfishness. Yeah. And I think if we would ask, well, do you think he can do that to others? Yeah. We'd be like, well, yeah, but we don't often live like that.
No,
and
we don't.
The fact is that on a natural level, there are certain relationships that I don't know if I could make up for the bad I've done. Like, I don't know what I would do. I mean, I could start loving you now. I could ask what I could do. But that'll never undo the evil that I've done.
No, it won't. And I don't think it's about that necessarily. I think it's about the willingness to begin to amend. And so look, I do think on one hand, I would say, should we pray that Christ heal in others the harms we've done to them? Absolutely, we should. The prayer is beautiful. On the other hand, do I think it's sometimes a cop out a little bit to just say, okay, you take care of that, Jesus? I think it's something like, sometimes God...
It's got to be both and,
yeah,
right?
I think it's both and. I think Christ
Because I want to make up for how I failed you, but I can also realize that even in my attempt to make up how I'm failing you, I might be failing. I have to abandon all to Jesus.
That's it. And I think what we do, we're responsible for the effort, and we let Christ be responsible for the outcome.
Yeah.
And so, and it can be, I mean, I think it's as simple as saying, I acknowledge my wrong. Here's what I did. I know that this was wrong. What can I do to begin to make it right for you? And then you give it to the person and they can say, well, you know, it would be really meaningful. Like, and it should be.
So I'm already in my head, I'm thinking about saying this to all of my kids. Because I was outside trying to have a break yesterday. My wife was beautiful. You know, she was helping. She got the kids to kind of clean the house. I came in and they were all sitting around and they all pointed out to me that they had just been running around cleaning the house. And they did that because they love me and they want me to be happy.
100%.
But I was just irritated about what wasn't done. And it's like I didn't even acknowledge. Yeah. So today I'm going to go and I'm going to thank them for doing that. Yeah. I'm going to say sorry that I screwed that up. I'm so grateful for you.
And look, you can go out of your way today in a special way to point out the little things they've done without.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Peter, great drawing. Man, I could tell you worked really hard on the drawing. Great job.
But so I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to sit down with them and say, hey, I screwed up yesterday and I'm sorry for it. Please forgive me. What can I do? And I know what they'll probably say is
nothing.
You could just they'll probably just say, if you could maybe not get stressed out next time. And like, I'll give that a shot. But
that's
how does that go?
I'll try.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try.
And if I fail, I'll say I'm sorry.
And every time I'll come back and say sorry. And
that's beautiful.
But by the way, this is where I also have like, amends is an action word. It's not just and so I don't just say I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't just say I'm sorry. What I do is I try to find where I consistently fail. If there's a pattern of failing in a particular way, one, I think our habitual sins tend to be rooted in, we end up confessing our habitual sins very often. Like, I'm so irritable. I think almost all irritability is rooted in some underlying defect of character, fear, greed, self-seeking. So if there's a pattern of irritability, or one, I try to uncover what is actually the thing in me that's causing. There's some thorn that they're touching, right? There's some button that they're pressing, and it's my button. It's not them. It's in me. And so I try to find and uncover that. But then I try to, like, what is the contrary or counteraction? And so to just say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm always irritable, guys. Well, no, I need to then, if irritability is my problem, focus on it. Like, intentionally focus on it and say, okay, God, I wake up and I'm irritable because I feel like I work so hard and nobody appreciates how hard I work, or nobody gives me whatever it might be. My guess is there's going to be a lot of me, I in it. Mm-hmm. Say, God, remove the me, I. How can I be of service to these kids and to my wife? Sometimes, by the way, leisure, taking time for me, is service to them. Because I come back better. So it doesn't mean that you're like running yourself ragged, But if I'm struggling with impatience, I want to find what's the counteraction to this, and I want to be aiming at it deliberately. So guys, hey, I'm going to go in the house today, and between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock when they go to bed, I'm going to find like one nice thing to say to each kid intentionally because I need to be transformed and changed. And my amends is going to be not just, sorry, I'm a wretch, forgive me. It's going to be, I'm amending my behavior. What does the word amend mean? Can you Google?
Amend. Let's see.
I think it doesn't, it's not just like, I think it means that like actually,
well, I think of
to
mend.
change.
I think of mend as well.
Yeah. You're like you're doing something. It's not just
to make better, improve. Modify formally is a legal document, right?
Okay.
And then put right is an old use of it.
I wonder what the etymology is though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
Amendere, Latin.
Let's see. From Anglo-French amender, modification of Latin emendare, from ex, so like out of, and then menda, fault, so to come out of a fault.
And so
it's related to mendix, lying, mendicus, which means beggar, and
mendicare.
Mendicare, yeah.
I think, I could, my kids will eventually learn that my words mean nothing if I just scream at them and say sorry all the time, and that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
No, it's about amending my behavior. And so they need to see I'm aiming at that. And so I can go out of my way to find, like, deliberately find things to praise that they've done. It's so small. It doesn't have to be big here. Peter, thank you for closing the door when you came in. I really appreciate that. Hey, Peter, like little things.
I find that too, that when I'm intentionally praising them for something, I'm then aware of how often I criticize them. Because when I say, hey, Peter, come here. What's he thinking? Does he think Dad's about to praise me? No, he's not.
Never.
So he's kind of shocked. And I'm glad that I do that. But it's also like, oh, wow, you gotta be careful. Yeah.
So I love that we get to participate. And I actually think it's crucial. So in one of the healing steps, I have people go back to the very beginning as far as they can remember and identify any wrongs they've done to others and be willing to make amends. I think that is a crucial step. And that came out of the 12 steps. I mean, AA has that, and I think it is. It's about keeping your side of the street clean. I know that to the best of my ability, I am willing to and have done whatever I can to keep my side of the street clean. And in that way, I've removed obstacles and barriers to God's grace in my life. I'm not holding on to things. I'm not holding on to resentments and grudges and hurts. And I've like cleared away my side of the street so that I'm now free. You don't have to receive my apology. You don't have to receive my amends. But I've done to the best of my ability what I can and I'm willing to do. And I think AA gets that very, very right. If we want to be free, if we want to be healed, we have to go back and humbly acknowledge all the harms we've done to others and be willing to set them right. Be willing to.
Yeah, that's really good. I wonder, I did this with people in high school a couple of years ago. There was also like a girl that I had an impure relationship with in high school. I wrote her a letter and asked her forgiveness. She may have been more offended by the letter than anything. Why would this be something, But maybe she wasn't. But I mean, what do you say to someone who has done something really harmful? Maybe they've raped somebody. I always think this when my beautiful sister Miriam shares her story of being sexually abused, and she shares it so beautifully and so simply, non-gratuitously,
Sure.
She's forgiven him and all that. And she shared, and I don't think she'd mind me sharing this because she shared it publicly. I know it's online, that she wrote to him and essentially said, I'll forgive you. And he wrote back and went, there's nothing to forgive. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I mean, how much that must hurt. Point is, suppose I'm that dude.
Yeah.
Suppose someone's out there and they've talked their girlfriend into getting an abortion or they've raped somebody. What do you say to them? How do they make amends for something that horrific?
Yeah. I think, look, in some cases, it may be that I think this is one where we need the guidance of a spiritual director, somebody who has some wisdom, maybe somebody who's familiar with the 12. The 12 steps have an interesting passage. I wish I had a big book. So I've done a lot of work with substance abusers, and can we pull up
the 12 steps?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
There's this beautiful passage in there where it basically says something like, look, let's say we've done something that could put us in jail.
Mm-hmm.
We've stolen money, right? Should we be willing to admit our faults? And they say something like, it depends if it's going to cause more hurt or more harm to certain people.
Yeah.
Like the goal isn't
Are you looking just for the 12 steps?
Let's see. Okay, the big book online. Can we find the big book? Let me see if I...
How are we going to find whatever's in the big book?
It's free. And
it sounds like a big book.
It's in...
How are we gonna...
It's in chapter...
PDF.
It's in a chapter called Into Action.
Purchase options. I don't want to do that. Listen,
don't purchase.
Watch, read.
It's
okay.
free.
And what's it called?
Into Action.
Into a title page. Oh, here we go. This is going to be great for video.
Yeah, just watching us. Neil.
Into Action. Found it. Boom.
Okay.
All right, what am I looking for?
Okay. So maybe Control F the word amends.
Okay. There
Can I look with you?
Yeah, you go for it.
Is that...
No, you
Okay.
go for it.
Okay. This is...
Just a quick story while you're doing that.
Please.
Once, I used to speak and write a lot about pornography, and I was traveling somewhere, and I thought, well, this is a long flight from San Diego where I was living. This would be a good time to read the White Book, which is the Sexaholics Anonymous book, right? And
yeah.
it's white. There's no writing on it on either side.
Yeah.
It's just anonymous. And so I was sitting down in a plane next to some girl who was in the middle seat, and I got up, went to the bathroom, came back, and I realized that the book had curled over the front page. So I'm just sitting next to a woman, says Sexaholics Anonymous.
You big dirty perv.
I know. And it's like, what do? You don't explain it. That's just creepy.
Nope.
You probably noticed.
like I do with my beard. Don't draw attention to that one, you know?
This is for work.
So
Probably was for both, honestly.
Here it is. It says,
All right.
perhaps we've committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts or unable to make good. So he's talking about money, but we've already admitted this in confidence to another person. So part of it is at least being willing to admit it to God, yourself, and another person, right? Not keeping it hidden in the dark. We've already admitted this to another person, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. A little something for me, not a lot. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony. She's indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which should guide our action, reminding ourselves that we've decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing. So I love that first they say like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Give me some sense. Give me the courage and some sense of what you'd like me to do. So that's first. No matter what the personal consequences may be, we're willing to go to any length to right these wrongs. So if that means that you need to go to jail for sexual abuse, then you'd be willing to do that.
You get to the point where you're actually willing to do that.
If you really want to be free, if you want to be humble, if you want to walk humbly with God, then I'm willing to accept the consequences of my actions, right? But it says we may lose our reputation or our position or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. But then here's the caveat, right? The caveat is usually there's other people involved. Therefore, we're not to be the hasty or foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. We know a man who had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid his alimony. She was angry. There was a court order for his arrest. He had commenced a new way of life. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." Instead, we thought he should be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We suggested he first write to his wife admitting his faults and asking for forgiveness. He did, and he also sent a small amount of money along. He told her that he would try to do this again in the future. He was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course, she did not. The whole situation is long since. So it's like something like, look, the goal here isn't to just be a martyr. If I have a family, I should want to be able to continue to serve them and honor them. But yet, if what I'm after is sort of spiritual freedom, I got to be willing justice, right? I have to be willing to pay those I owe what I owe. And I may owe the authorities, I may owe a person, and I need to be willing to do that, to set it right. What I love about AA a little bit is that it's such a, they ask for everything, all in the service of having a radical experience of God. Like, I have to be willing to go to any length. Not like, oh, I do, but I'm keeping that for myself. It's about radical conversion, turning the entirety of my life over to him and saying, I want to live a new way, completely and totally. And if that means I need to pay somebody $100 a month for the rest of my life because I've stolen, I'll do it. If that means I need to go to jail for an offense, I'll do it. But I have a family now. I have people to take care of. So if I can not be foolish and still continue to provide for the family I have, and for, like the gentleman there, then I do whatever I can to try to make sure that that's what happens. But if jail is in the cards, jail may be in the cards.
Man alive.
And if God is real, and if God is in my life, and if I've really had this deep and profound conversion, then God's got me in jail as well. And he's brought me there, and I will love and serve him, and I'll be of maximum service to him and others, even in prison.
It is kind of weird on a superficial level that people feel tremendous relief when they own up to what they've done, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
Like, you would think that, no, if I hide it, I won't get in trouble, and therefore I should be relieved. But
it's so liberating.
So many movies have this little turnaround, and we've experienced in our own life as well, that when we finally come clean, there's just this.
It's so liberating.
Dr. Breuninger, I'm really interested. So that reminds me of Crime and Punishment, what you just said, Matt.
What's that? Crime and Punishment? Yes, exactly.
I was thinking of, you can help me remember this, Matt, too. In Brothers Karamazov, there's a story about a man who, when he's like young, I think he goes in and kills someone. He like goes into their office, commits this perfect crime, killing them, taking the money. And so then he uses that a little bit, but builds his life from there. He gets married, he starts a family.
Right.
And then when he's 50 years old, he says, this has been torturing me my entire life.
Yes.
And so he confesses, I think first to his wife, and then his wife is like, I don't believe you. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think that's true. And then eventually I think he convinces her, and he goes to the authorities to turn himself in, and they're like, there's like no evidence around this. Like, you can't just like turn yourself in for a random crime. We're not going to put you in jail. And so they just send him back to his family. And he's, it seems he's like tortured by that lack of punishment.
I think we shouldn't have to be punished. We just have to I think we have to be willing to be honest. So the goal is to be willing to be honest and say, here's what I've done. And so I even have a section there where, and this is tough.
In your book?
Yeah, where I ask people to go back and like sort of take their deepest, darkest secrets, the things that they've promised they'd go to the grave with, and they write them down, and they have to be willing to share them with one trusted confidant.
Wow.
I recommend that they do it with a spiritual director or a confessor. But I think oftentimes we're as sick as our darkest secret. It's really hard to be vessels of light when we're holding on to darkness. It's really hard to be free the way God wants us to be free when there's a part of ourselves that we will never, never turn over. And so actually what I like in the story is that he's willing to share it with others. So it's not just about like confessing it to Christ in my head. Oh, well, God knows. I think in humility, I have to share it with another person, right? And with God. But then the goal is to be willing to face whatever punishment, not to actually be punished. I would think, for me, the sheer act of saying to the authorities, I did this and I'm willing to accept whatever punishment. If they're like, hey, no, we're not going to do it. I'm like, okay, but I'm willing to go if that's what it takes. I would have felt, I think, relief. But yeah, he's tortured. He feels by the lack of punishment almost. And I think that can be I think that can actually be a sort of like self pity or a self like, I want to give myself more than you're like, stop, like let go. Because now your utter focus on yourself is again preventing you from being of service to God and others.
I really want to read this book again. Yeah. It's funny. I'm teaching at Ave in the spring.
Right
yeah. I love it so much. And I think that what you're referring to, the priest is telling the story, isn't he? He was like a general, or he got into some shooting match and he killed somebody, but that may have been different. What's crazy about the brothers is there's so many incredible side stories. It's kind of like the Bible. You know, the Bible timeline. You only need to read this to get the story. You could do that with the Brothers Karamazov. You could just take out so much, but so much is so good. Remember, he was going to kill, because that man confessed to this priest, and then he said he was tempted to kill him.
That's a good part of it,
that was so good.
Because he's tempted to kill the priest.
He confesses to the priest.
And he wasn't yet a priest, I don't believe. So it wasn't like he was going to confession. They just became friends, and they would meet every night, and he started sharing what was going on. And then on the last night, he was like sweating, and he was like he was going to kill the man because he was the only one who knew this dark secret.
I've never read Brothers K.
Oh, it's so good. I'm going to read it in August. Point. Awesome. Just to sum up what I was going to say there is I was going to read just the works that I had to teach in Ave.
Yes.
But I don't think I'm going to do that. I just want to read the Brothers. I just love the Brothers so much.
Well, how are you going to weave that in? What are you teaching?
I'm teaching ethics.
So there's the famous...
No, I mean, I'm not teaching this at all. I'm just saying August I take the month off the internet.
Okay.
You know that? I tell everybody so they know how great I am. So be surprised if I didn't tell you yet. Really? That's all I talk about. Especially around this time of the year. I feel tremendous anxiety around this time of year. It's so weird. It's the 4th year in a row I've given up the internet, right? Sure. I know it's coming. Yeah. There's a real sense of anxiety.
What is it?
It's Stockholm Syndrome. No, I don't know. It's probably a series of things. It's like everything has to be in order once I go. Because once I go, I give my phone away. I give my computer away. I have no phone.
Yeah.
Neil's got to keep things banging, you know, like putting out the clips.
Yep.
But I don't know if he's doing it because I'm not, you know, usually I'll be like, oh, that clip's doing well, or this video's doing well. It's like an addictive thing. It's like,
is there a fear? What's the fear?
Okay, thank you. Let's do this. I really want to get to this because it's a number of things, right? There's a series of fears. One fear is I go offline in August, you text me. You don't get a text back, and you think badly of me because why would I disrespect you by not getting back to you?
Yep.
But times that by 50 because that's how many people are texting me, and I'm not getting back to them. I feel bad about that.
Okay. But again, it's about what are people going to think of me?
Totally.
Right?
That is what it's about.
A desire for self-respect. Or self, what's the word? Maybe a slightly excessive desire for self... whatever,
praise or adulation,
like
I want to be a respectable person. I don't want people to think I think I'm better than them.
Yeah.
You know, like it's been a month, right? And I'm still not getting back to them, and I don't know what's going on. And I announce it on here. I have an email responder, right, that says I'll be gone until September. If this is important, I say call my wife, but then I don't give my number out, her number out, because I'm like, if you don't know my wife's number, it's not that important to me.
In the circle,
it's not that important.
Yes.
So, but you don't. But there's no such thing as a text responder,
right? Okay, so
by the way, I think this might be going live in August, right? This podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're pre-recording this in part, right? It's because I want something to come out in August. So, but there's no text responder. There's no like, hey, I'm not by my phone right now. Yeah. At least that I know of. So there's that fear. Yeah. There's the fear that things will fall apart while I'm away.
What would happen with that then? Because there's probably even a deeper fear that if things fell apart.
You're exactly right. Then,
right. So what does falling apart mean? It means like Neil's not doing what he's supposed to. So Neil's sitting up here having a grand old time for himself.
Yeah, smoking hookah. Not uploading any clips.
No
not
clips.
Being attentive to that.
And then,
my social media guy's not running his thing. And then what collapses? I don't know, like maybe YouTube, the algorithm drops off and people don't watch as many videos and I can't catch up and it's all going to fall apart and I won't have enough money and we won't be able to make things work. And
dude.
And somehow at the bottom I'll be alone. I just just gotta keep going.
Right. And then Cameron sees you're not a good protector provider. And your kids think you're fear. Yeah.
It's so stupid when you say it out loud because I know none of that'll happen.
But by the way, like now you're okay. So you spend all this time. You go off the grid in August. But if you go off the grid with all this fear, are you free to do what God wants you to do at that time?
Read the Brothers.
Do you have, and it might be, right? But the whole time you're reading the Brothers, now you're thinking like, but I wonder if just Neil is...
Yeah.
As opposed to just saying like, God, take this fear that I won't have enough money, that I won't have enough adulation, I won't have enough influence that I want. Right? Take this fear, remove it so that I can be of service to you. Matt, like God doesn't need... You have a big old audience, right? Mm-hmm. Right now. But really, it doesn't matter because God wants you to be of maximum service to him in whatever way he wants you to be of service. So if tomorrow he decides to take it all and say, hey, I want you to just be down at Ave teaching one class in ethics, making $55,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That's how I want you to serve me.
Good.
Like,
I don't think Alvin would pay that much, but that would be I don't know.
But he's so happy to be coming down, guys. I promise. I swear.
Also, it's great. Universities are great.
So
Your kids should definitely go.
could you be free to do that?
Yeah.
Because it's not about, I mean, very subtly, when God puts us in places and spaces, we can very subtly allow ego and pride, self to attach.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes about us. It becomes about us.
About
Instead of like each day saying, God, it's not about me. Not just lip service, but like for real. I give this all up tomorrow if you said it.
Amen. Well, it's funny, like I'm dealing with three things all at once. The first thing, as you said that, was, yeah, this is all about me and I've made it all about me and that's a fact. And so I feel how painful it is that I haven't turned this over. But then there's another thing going on, which is love is not about what is sensible. It's about the will. And I like to say this to our blessed Lord in adoration sometimes. I say, Jesus, I love you. And I don't want to wait till tomorrow until I feel in love with you. And I don't want to wait till my kids are grown and I can offer you more prayer time. I love you now.
Yes.
I give it all to you.
Yes.
So there's this, I say that now and I mean it. Lord, take it all away.
Yes.
I give you everything.
Good.
And again, it doesn't matter how I feel. That's what I do mean that, Lord.
Yeah.
You know I mean it. And even if I don't mean it, I still mean it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's so important because we can really get caught up in ourselves in doing God's work.
You know what's been weird? You can psychoanalyze this.
Yeah.
What's been weird for me is realizing the influence I have. And I know all this is relative. There are thousands of channels that have a gazillion followers, right? But I've been aware of, like, people email me all the time.
Yeah.
Like, people always want to be on my show.
Yes.
People call me out of the blue. I don't know who they are, or they text me and they all want to be on my show. And they say the things they should say that would make me want them on my show. Like, no one's needy or weird about it, but it's still like, this feels good. Like, I have this kind of influence. I'm aware of that.
Yes.
How could you not be aware? How could you not be aware of that? Because I think I've lived a lot of my life unaware of that. But how could it not affect you? This lie that like, no, I'm just that humble that it wouldn't affect me. It's like, really? Or are you just like all of us?
Exactly. And I think being honest, so I would have to have, I do have, right, at least one guy in my corner who like knows me and he gets carte blanche to call me out on whatever it is, right?
Wow,
actually, I have two guys. It. And so when they're like, dude, this is all about you, this is all pride, this is all like, because I've shared everything from the beginning, all the nooks, crannies, wounds, hurt, like they know it all. And they get carte blanche to sort of point out where I'm being motivated by self and pride and ego.
Do you ask them to do this, or do they just come out of the blue and do it?
No, I ask them. Yeah. It's sort of a part of.
So how do you do that? What does that conversation look like?
So it was ages ago. I mean, it was just sort of like a, well, let me think. Was it explicit? It wasn't not in the sense of like, hey man, I want you to call me out, but it was like it was an understanding, let's say, that I care about you and love you and I want to see what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And the same was said to me. And it started off maybe with little things like, dude, you're just, so, I get into an argument with somebody, or I'll never forget, I was 19 and I got into this argument with somebody, and it was a family member. And here I am, screaming like, meet me outside. Like I'm coming at you. And I go up to my buddy's house and I tell him the story of what happened. And he's like, dude, I would have been so angry too. But you know that like the way you acted was totally unjustified and you owe him an amends. Oh, and I was like, what?
He used that language,
what?
Amends?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, and my buddy's been in AA for years.
Whenever I meet someone who says they've been through SA or AA, I just realize immediately that I'm dealing with a much thicker person than most.
I think actually some of the holiest people I've ever met, and I kid you not, there's some fascinating stories around Bill Wilson, the founder of AA. His spiritual director was a Jesuit priest named Father Ed Dowling. And there's letters back and forth between them where Bill actually apparently like had a vision of like some heavenly being who I think revealed him as like St. Ambrose maybe, and said like, I want to help you write this big book. And like a good Jesuit at the time, Father Dowling was like, look, we don't know, like we want to discern the beginning, middle, and end, and we don't know the end of this. Even Satan can come as an angel of light. So he said like, thank him for his help, but tell him that if this is ordained by God, then
I like that.
But Bill has a ton of sort of Catholic sympathies. and they come out in the big book in little subtle ways. At one point, when you're supposed to admit your faults to others, it says, those of us who belong to denominations that require confession will want to and must seek out the appropriate authority. Like he's saying to Catholics, hey, if you're going through this, you need to go to confession.
So I don't know anything about the foundations of AA. Was he an evangelical Protestant? Or?
Yeah, he was a Christian guy. I think I don't want to botch my Bill W. history, but I think he's a Christian man. I don't know his.
I love when I hear Neil clicking.
Yeah, Neil.
I'm like, something's coming.
Splice it in. But he, at the time there was a lot of the Oxford movement was a religious movement that was trying to help people get sober with the 4 absolutes. It was like absolute love, absolute honesty, absolute purity, and absolute, I don't know, the 4 absolutes.
You said Oxford. So did this come out of England? Where did AA generate?
So AA generated, actually the first meeting was up in Ohio.
Wow.
So Bill's traveling on vacation.
Is he from England or?
No, he's
American.
From the US, right? I think he was living in New York at the time. He comes to England. He comes to Ohio, which is like the England of the Midwest. He comes to Ohio and he wants to get drunk. And so he calls, I'm pretty sure he calls the Oxford group or the Oxford movement, and they put him in touch with somebody. This drunk by the name of Dr. Bob, who couldn't get sober. And Bill had sort of had this spiritual experience at this point. And he meets with Dr. Bob, and they say that was the first AA meeting because it was the first time an alcoholic reached out to another alcoholic and to help. And so I think it's in Akron. Akron is, every year in Akron, they have Founders Day. And it was because Bill Wilson reached out to Dr. Bob Smith, and they were the first 2 members of AA. But Bill Wilson went on to get like catechetical instruction from Archbishop Fulton Sheen.
I think I heard that.
He was interested in Catholicism quite a bit. So anyway, all that to say, I think there's a lot there. And I've met some incredibly holy people who have gone through the 12 steps and live a radical and profound life of service to God and have deep, what they would call conscious contact. Every day they want to bring God and God's will into each moment. And they become utterly myopically focused with wanting to do God's will in each moment. Humbly. Whatever you ask, I'll go wherever, I'll do whatever. Give me the strength and give me the courage and give me the guidance to do what you want. I mean, it's beautiful. But this is what my buddy said. Matt, you own him Amends. And this friend just has carte blanche to say whatever he wants and to point it out. And he has. And I've done the same for him. And I think we need that. I think we need a guy. So this goes all the way back. If I were in your position, right? 250,000 followers, I would need someone who could say, yeah, cool, but don't forget. I know who you are. I know what you're don't buy your own hype. Don't buy your own hype. Any good you're doing is in service to God. It's not of service to you. If God wants it tomorrow, you've given it to him. You've told him you can have it all.
Amen,
so if you've said that,
it's not yours.
Then don't worry about what Neil does over the summer, and don't worry about God, you're in charge. I trust you. I think you want me to love and serve my family here in a radical way, detached from. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to love and serve you the way I think you want me to love and serve you right now. And you'll take care of all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to make that recommitment every moment, 4, 5, 6, 10 times throughout the day. So be it. But if you're caught up in fear the whole time, you're not going to be the dad you want to be in August. You're not going to be the husband you want to be. You're chomping at the bit.
This is sort of, since I've done this for 4 years, there is a bit of what happens is there is this fear and anxiety. But when I click off and give my phone away and computer away, I should have perhaps fleshed this out by explaining this. There's just deep relief.
Yeah, I bet.
I actually do feel tremendously. I think the last interview I did last year was with Peter Kraft. It was the 31st of July or the 30th of July. And I knew that was it.
Felt so good.
And we didn't have Neil at the time. It was Joseph Palmer. I don't know if you know him. He works for St. Paul Center doing video stuff. But so when I finished, I gave my phone to Joseph, because I have no self-control. That's not true. I have self-control. I'm smart enough to know where I'm dumb. So I don't take the phone home with me and put it in my top drawer. There's no way that's going to work for a month.
Yeah.
So I give it away, and there's just, it's so good, man. Awesome. I love it. I went up to Franciscan that night after just giving everything away. And I was just aware of everything a lot more. And then there were these like, you know, the beautiful center of Francisco when you drive up those flowers that are there in the summertime.
The Rosary Circle,
right? So I see it and I think to myself, man, those are beautiful. And I want to go see them. And then I think, well, that's a bit weird. Like, don't be weird. And then I think,
why not?
Why not? The whole point is to look at them. That's why they're there. That's actually the only reason. And I'm not going to do it because I want to be weird. Dude. Screw not being weird. So I actually got to go up and like smell them and look at them and pick it off. And
I think it's great.
Yeah, I am very blessed. I mean, it is certainly a blessing that I can do that. Not everyone can take a month off. And I've tried. I remember one Lent, I was like, I'm just going to go online one day a week. Like, why be all or nothing about it? Turns out I have to be all or nothing about it.
Really?
Yeah, because if I let the internet in one day, it's like the camel nose under the tent. It's like it just comes in. And that's just might be due to temperament or how I work.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I need to be all or nothing.
That's interesting.
With everything in my life, like with exercise, with diet, with...
Interesting.
I gotta go all in, or else
or nothing.
I don't know. Like if I just say I'm gonna eat better, I mean maybe that's
like
true of everybody.
It's like,
exactly. Yeah. I'm gonna be very specific about what I will and won't do, or else it just things start fading in or out. So I'll say things like I'm gonna allow myself to watch TV, like with my wife or kids. Like I have to say these rules out loud to myself, otherwise I feel like, I'm conceding, and then, I've conceded, so I may as well just quickly check and see, and then it's good night.
Do you think, is this hard? Is this as a job? Like from the outside, I think people would look and say, like, what a cake job.
Oh,
like,
it's the best.
Yeah, like you get to just like talk to people all the time.
It is the best. It's not hard.
Yeah.
I love it so freaking much.
But there are like fears and anxieties and... that creep up or creep in.
Yeah, maybe the Lord was merciful to me knowing that I couldn't have a real job, and so gave me this.
Yeah, Matt, have you had a 9 to 5?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to work at a copper mine in the outback.
It like reminds me of working in the salt mines of Uganda.
Yeah, but I did. Yeah. But actually, it wasn't hard work.
Sorry, I was in the office.
Look at these hands.
Yeah, I was in the office in Melbourne, but we owned a copper mine. Yeah, my bad. Right.
No, I worked as a analytical lab technician. So we would run the samples to see what minerals were in the soil.
So you weren't swinging the pickaxe deep down like 10
a little bit, but
okay.
not much. So I did that. I worked at a grocery store, and then I worked at like a couple of parishes, and But I just not
speaking,
good
it was
at
just
working
like
with people. I used to work at Catholic Answers. You ever heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, in San Diego. So I used to work there 9 to 5 too.
Okay. I didn't know they were out of San Diego.
But no, it's such a blessing because I'm so freaking like entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I don't do well with regularity, like with like 9 to 5 and you're going to be busting on all cylinders. No, for me, if I wake up at 5:30, I can come in, I can crush more work in 3 hours than I would imagine many people could in a day.
Yeah.
And then I just go home and have a nap. I have a nap every day. I try
every day.
Yeah.
I napped every day in college. I love
napping.
The best. I loved it.
And I only nap for 20 minutes.
Oh no, that's not a nap. That's a long blink, Matt. I used to, like in college, it was like if it was less than an hour and a half, that's
See,
not
I
a
don't
nap.
want an hour and a half nap though.
I want
be
a 2-hour
exhausted.
nap. I want 2.
And you wake up feeling good?
Like an absolute phenom. Like a legend.
My wife, if she has a nap, she wakes up angry. So she can't nap.
There's something about, I read something a while back about it matters what sleep cycle you wake up in. That if, and Neil can fact check all this, but something like if you wake up in the wrong sleep cycle, you're like more likely to have negative mood. So like the key is to like wake up in the right sleep cycle.
Yeah.
So that you
Well, the other day, Bob Rice, I don't know if I told you this, he invited me over. He's like, hey, 10 p.m., me and the guys are going to get together and watch hockey. There's this like, and I'm like, I will ruin my day.
10 p.m.
What the hell are you talking about,
Bob.
David? My wife started laughing. She said, you're so old. And she's right, maybe, but that would actually ruin the next day for me.
I have a buddy who watches boxing. He loves boxing.
I'd like to love boxing.
Okay. I've started to appreciate it more. I thought it was just like dudes slugging each other. He has introduced me to sort of the skill of boxing where, watch, he's timing the guy's jab and he's waiting to set up and look at how he's feigning and he's getting his reach. So he's really shown me that there's a real skill and sort of a chess-like approach to boxing. It's not just brute sort of smashing each other. But most boxing match, I mean, it's like the pay-per-views start at 10 and like the main event comes on at 12 and it's over at 1. Oh my gosh. So I've gone a couple times, but I'm just like, buddy, I can't. My day's ruined if I.
Because there's a certain amount of sleep that if I don't get it, no amount of coffee will fix it.
No,
I'll just be under this deep,
Yeah.
heavy cloud.
No, that's right.
And I wake up the same time every day. I wake up like 6, 5:30, 6, 7. I can't sleep in, even if I want to.
That's crazy. Were you up the other morning when I was outside waiting to pick up your son? Remember that?
I wasn't.
Stop.
Well, I had the air conditioner on. I like putting things loud so I can't hear anything else.
Matt, that actually so in our neighborhoods,
Yeah.
in the summer when we turn the ACs on, I realize I actually sleep much more fitfully because I like being able to know that I can hear the house better in the winter.
In case somebody probably says something good about you and bad about me. I don't want to hear anything.
Somebody could just be downstairs and you're just like, meh.
Yeah. I have no fear about people coming into my house.
Really?
But maybe I should, but I
gosh.
don't. I have no fear about that. We would lock
Good
the
for
house
you.
and everything.
Yeah, dude, we lock it.
And
we
we're
have an
also
alarm,
upstairs. Like we're all upstairs on the same floor.
Oh,
Liam's in the attic. No one goes up there.
People don't go to the second floor when they're robbing houses.
Yeah, only first floor. No, my point is if my kids were on the first floor, then I'd be worried maybe.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But they're next door.
I see. Yeah, I had to, just yesterday, some guy pulled up in our alley. I was outside, pulled up in our alley, got out, walked around the corner, got in another guy's car and was buying drugs. And so when he got out, I had to say, hey, excuse me, like I'd appreciate it if you didn't buy drugs in front of my house.
Stupid.
Like,
what did he say?
He was like, oh yeah, sorry, bro.
How did you know he was buying drugs?
Because
it was so obvious.
I fired up the lawnmower and went down and pretended to mow the strip next to it. And he was pulling out wads of cash and handing it to the guy. Like I saw the exchange.
Nice.
And I kindly asked him not to sell drugs or buy drugs.
We had in terms of like confronting people, we had John Henry on the show. He's
Crosby?
No, John Henry Span. I'm going to Africa next month to go hunting.
What do you do?
Hunting.
Oh gosh, dude. Okay, so my wife has this
with him. That's why I brought that up.
Okay, my wife has this thing about Neil. This is great because I see where this is going. So my wife thinks that your job, Neil, is like
this is great. By the way, this should be your job description. What he's about to say.
Okay, the long interviews are like a little smoldering fire, right? And like coals. And Neil's job is to take the long interview, chop it up, and like spray gasoline on it. So these little clips are just like
therapists, yes,
right? Or so for sure, Matt's going to talk about big game hunting in Africa, and Neil's going to take a clip that's like killing an elephant! Exclamation point! And 100 million people are going to click that because a ton of people out there hate big game hunting. And this 8-minute clip, whatever's coming for the next 8 minutes, Neil's writing down. Yeah, big game Africa? Question mark.
Yeah,
and it's gonna flare up, and it's gonna get like 100,000 likes or views.
Wealthy dentist male. The
trick is to make them think that it's like someone who made a video about how they caught you hunting
exactly.
in Africa.
Or something like that. Dude, you're onto it. Okay, so you're going to Africa.
Funny. 2 years ago, my best mate John Henry said he's been his life dream to go to Africa and hunt. So we started saving and.
What are you hunting?
I don't really know what's going on, dude.
Big game. The most dangerous game of all.
Have you heard of elephants? I'm not really exactly. Yeah, I mean, what are those things called with the horns? Those things, impala. What are they called? Those things?
I think it's an impala.
You're shooting those in the face.
Okay.
Shooting other things. I don't like seeing the life drain from their eyes, man. That's why I shoot them in the face.
Yeah, I can't. I'm in this clip. Just so the world knows.
And just so you know, I mean, it's done all responsibly. The meat goes to the local folks.
To be honest, the conservation, I mean, I think people have a real whatever about this stuff, but in reality, the conservation effort, they make a ton of money off this stuff that goes back into the local communities.
It does, and we don't get the meat. The meat goes to them.
Exactly. So
anyway, why did I say that? Okay, John Henry.
You're hunting.
Oh yeah, you confronting the guy selling drugs.
Yes.
One of my favorite John Henry moments is we were sitting in Chick-fil-A. It was me and him, and John Henry's just a trooper, and he teaches high school, and he's just really brash. And the kids were behind us in the next booth, just F this, F that, dropping. And I could just see John Henry kind of getting upset slowly. And then he turns around, he leans over, he's like, hey, could you stop effing swearing? That'd be great, thanks.
Dude,
turned around and they just shut up.
So my dad's from inner city Philadelphia, a place called Fishtown, like tough, blue collar, poor. My dad is a tough man. He's a big man and he's a tough man. But he's older now, 60, 61. So we're at a Pirates game last summer. They came in for Charlie's birth. We're at a Pirates game. There's probably 20 kids behind us from Grove City College, drinking and using all sorts of language. And I'm sitting there with, my little kids, the 5-year-old, the 10-year-old, okay. And I'm sitting there with my dad and my mom. All game, this is going on, all game. And it's the Phillies versus the Pirates. My dad's a huge Phillies fan. At one point, the language is getting bad, so I look at my dad and I'm like, kind of make a face.
Like, now's time?
And he goes, yeah. And he's like, let's go. And I was like, no, I want to stay. So my the Phillies are losing, so he's angry, right, to begin with. And so he's ready to go. And I said, no, I want to stay. We paid for the tickets. Let's stay. I'm just going to ask them to use better language. And he leaned in and he said, just so you know, I'm not taking any from them. And I was, so my dad, there's 20 kids from Grove City behind us. And my 60-year-old father, if they say something to me, is going to absolutely smash them. I mean, just destroy. So, luckily I turned around, I was like, guys, can you please? And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Oh, my bad. Yeah. And he was like, what'd they say? And I was like, they said it's fine.
They called you fat.
Yeah, I don't know, but it sounded like, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, John Henry sounds like Mick Breuninger.
So when you said, could you stop swearing, did you say something about your kids present?
Yeah, I said, guys, there's a bunch of little kids here. Can you just, you're using all sorts of language. Can you please just stop? Like, there's young kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, dude, we're sorry, bro. Oh, man, sorry, bro. We didn't. And of course, an inning later, a couple F-bombs slipped back out. But but they weren't being belligerent.
Over the top at that point.
Yeah.
I remember my dad would never have any problem correcting people. It was always to my great shame. I remember going to a movie. We had one movie theatre in Port Pirie, South Australia. Still one movie theatre there. Movie comes out every month. Yeah. So we were sitting there, me, Dad, and Tom, my brother, these kids. And we know everybody because it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody, So I'm already there with my dad watching the movies. And my dad turned around and said, hey, excuse me, we paid bloody good money for these seats.
It's really proper, dude.
Oh, God. I'm so proud of him for doing that. I'm glad he did it. Yeah. But bloody good money for these seats.
My dad, you never felt... My dad's the kind of guy that when you were out with him, you always felt safe. You never felt unsafe. In terms of protecting, Big Mick, you always felt safe with Big Mick. I remember this kid was making fun of me in 6th grade, said some terrible things to me. And I went home and I told my dad. And this is great. So where my dad grew up, I guess because it was probably pretty poor, when you wanted to confront someone, you put on your nicest suit. You got dressed up. Okay. So my dad puts on his nicest suit. He goes and knocks on the door. Right? The wife answers. He said, hi, is Mr. So-and-so here? The dad comes to the door and he says, look, here's what your kid said to my kid. And if he ever says that again, if he so much as speaks to my kid, I'm coming back here and I'm beating you up. I'm going to kick your rear end. The kid never said anything again. I mean, but yeah. So it doesn't have the sort of erudite, we played buddy good money. It doesn't, but it was a little grittier, but you never felt, my dad, I will say, much to his credit, you always felt very safe in his presence.
That's amazing.
Very, very safe. And I don't always have that. I felt a little afraid to confront that guy yesterday just because you don't know. Somebody's buying drugs. You don't quite know
But good for you for doing the courageous thing.
I try to play it smart though too, because it's no good if I get shot in the face and right.
That doesn't help.
My wife says at least he overcame his fear and confronted the So trying to read the situation. It felt like the right situation.
It's hard to know whether I'm listening to courage or cowardice at this point, right? Because you can say, well, I better not. There's no point. This only happened once. It's not going to happen. Good for you for doing that.
So yeah, that's always never shortage of opportunities here in town.
We get a drunk guy on our street who's very polite and lovely when he's not drinking. And even when he is drinking, he's polite, but way too polite. Hey, Matt, how you doing? And I struggle to know how to interact with this person because I don't want him close to my family. I don't want him to feel like we're friends.
Yep.
But I also want to love him.
Yep.
So, oh, hi, how are you? Great to see you. Yeah. Hey, the only kind of snow I like is on postcards. That's his line every time. It's snowing. Yeah.
Like it's new.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah, great.
So that's different, you know.
I feel like when I was a young man, I would put myself in places and spaces that felt like, you know, like with homeless people, with addicts, with alcoholics, you know, I'd go to these places that, and put myself in situations that were, you know, maybe dangerous. But I feel very, you know, I'd invite them into my house. My grandmother is a saint. And so sometimes she would come home. I was living with her for a period, it's like 19 or 20. And I would just bring like homeless people to like shower. And she would like come into her house and there was like a homeless guy showering. And she'd be like, who's in the shower? And I'm like, oh,
Jeff.
it's my buddy Randy, right? Like Randy hasn't showered in months and he's hammered. And it was like a bed and breakfast that I would just, you know, it was sort of, yeah. So God bless her. But now these days, right, I just wouldn't, I feel like my family's on the line and I just feel so protective.
The second day we moved into Lawson Avenue, we had a drugged out woman walk into our back door. Do you know about this?
No.
Here's where I was laughing. Because it was like, I just moved to Steubenville. I know you guys say this doesn't happen all the time, but I now think you're all lying to me.
It happens all the time.
So I wrote to Bob Lesniewski. I'm like, hey, this drugged out woman, he lived on the same street as me, just came into my house. He just wrote back, was it Kate? His wife. Was it Kate? I just thought that was brilliant.
That's so funny.
But man, I just launched at her, get out of my house. Like, and don't you ever come back here. It just all came out. Because my son Liam was like, Dad.
Dude, I know.
Oh, I know. And I've had that. But see, I'm happy that that's happened with a fella too before, or else I might think that I was that courageous because it was a Sheila. We had a bloke walk into our house right after Liam was born in Ireland. He was the painter. He would paint our house. Unfortunately, big alcohol problem in Ireland, of course. And with the area we lived, it was like every single family had been hurt by alcoholism. And yeah, this guy, a huge beast of a guy, like came in. He was just slurring and speaking against the faith because we were into that kind of thing. And he had muddy boots on. And I am glad. It is nice when you see yourself like acting courageous, even without thinking of it. Like when I hit that bat in the face. I grabbed a candlestick.
Did you backhand the bat real quick?
I didn't. I high-fived it. It was hey! And like, didn't you joke about white people like redoing high fives? Was that you?
I don't think so.
It was my other black friend.
It sounds like it could be me, but
someone said it was like white guys like redoing high fives. So it's a thing that we do apparently. Anyway, but I picked up a brass candlestick because I was like, I'm going to have to hit this guy in the face. And unfortunately, I didn't get to. That would have been a cool story.
Would have been a great story.
But he ended up leaving. But
because he saw in your eyes.
Yeah, because I was laying in bed with my wife and our brand new son, Liam.
I will never forget the feeling. So when I got married, I felt, it's like this unlocking of your heart. I felt such love for my wife and I felt so protective on our honeymoon. But when our first baby was born, never forget like that Sunday, taking the baby in the car seat out of the car to go to mass. And just feeling like I will seriously hurt anyone who like threatens the well-being of this child. You know, like a car drives up and you're like, whoa, slow down, man. This is a parking lot. I have a baby. Like it felt like it unlocked a real sort of this dimension.
That's why this argument that, you know, this isn't always the case, but being a parent makes you a better human. Because all of a sudden you're concerned about the safety of the parks and the safety and what's going on in the schools. Whereas yesterday you didn't care about any of that.
Yeah. Your circle of concern widens so much.
Yeah.
Well,
this is fun.
This is great.
This is great.
Some Googlings.
Yeah. Good.
So Bill Wilson very adamantly
homosexual Indian man. No, that's not him, Neil. You got the wrong guy. Sorry. Kick on.
So he was very adamantly non-denominational speaking. He did all those things you said were true, though.
Good.
And he, depending on who you asked, apparently almost became Catholic at one point. His wife thought he wasn't even close ever. A friend did. Thought he was close to converting at one point. And then the REM sleep is a thing, too. So
is that the one? When do you want to come out of?
So I think it's like you essentially go steps down, and then the deepest one is that REM sleep, which is like when the deep dreaming occurs, and then it's like specifically important. And I couldn't find this. I was looking for the study, but I remember reading about a study a while ago where they specifically sensed when people went into REM sleep and woke them up right away.
Yes.
And then like I think it was like more than 2/3 of the people just dropped out of the study because it made them so miserable.
Yeah. There's something about like if you wake up in certain stages, maybe it's REM, maybe it's stage 4 or something like that, stage 3, you like wake up with more negative affect than if you sort of come up to stage 2 or 1 or something. Like that. So anyway, it could just be, Matt, that you're waking up. That's why I think they say 20 minutes is like the right length of time.
I feel so good.
But multiply 20 by some even number, like...
I see.
You'll get to the.
It's funny. Like yesterday, I had a nap and I came down and how long was I sleeping? And Peter was like, "You went to sleep?"
Yeah,
because I
was
just
6
walked up
minutes.
there.
Right? Yeah.
It's so funny. It's actually a real interesting experience noticing your thoughts as they drift into sleep. They just get weird.
Yeah.
Like there's an emu. Why is there an emu? That's normal that I'm thinking about that, isn't it?
When I was young, I used to be terrified that like every time I fell asleep, there was some like terrible thing that happened in my head, and I just never remembered it. So I used to like always try very particularly to try to remember what it felt like falling asleep.
Oh, interesting. What do you guys do to get to sleep? What do you think about to go to sleep?
I fall asleep so quickly.
Do you?
I absolutely have no... Like I literally...
But when you're having a nap too?
Roll my head over and...
Same thing? If you're napping in the day?
If I'm tired enough to nap, I just fall out. Like I don't...
What about you?
Well, I take a melatonin. A lot of the time I'm doing...
Do you find that helps melatonin? My wife talks about it.
I've read that you have to take it a while before, and that's what I found. It's like it takes like 40 or half an hour to take it. But then also just making sure I'm like relaxed, just physically is a big thing. I'm like holding a lot of tension.
Yeah, I'm aware of that more and more.
That stuff can help quite a bit, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah, like doing like a
I think melatonin.
No, like noticing tension in your neck and back. Some people write out like the to-do list, like all the things in your head that you feel like you have to hold on to or chew over. You just write it all down and just put it by your bed.
See, that's good. That'll do for August. That's a great idea for August.
Yeah.
All the things I'm worried about, and then
write them down and then just go to sleep. Yeah.
I'll do 2 things. I listen to a horror podcast.
A horror podcast?
Speaking of just letting the tension that's what I do.
Let the id come alive while you're sleeping. Yeah.
So my favorite horror podcast is called Knife Point Horror.
Okay.
And it's more, I think it could be better described so it doesn't give the wrong impression, as supernatural suspense fiction. It's always like first person accounts of a guy, and it's pretty horrific, but it's more strange than it is bloody or anything like that.
I can't do gory.
And he's got a lovely voice, and so I'll just lay down and listen to him. Or I'll do this thought experiment. I don't know if I'll imagine myself walking into a big giant cathedral. Mm-hmm. This is going to sound, I don't know how this sounds, but we've begun it, so I guess I'm going to have to run it through. I'll walk into a giant cathedral at dawn, and there's candles lit everywhere. And I'll just walk through and I'll just get them, extinguish them one by one. It's kind of like the equivalent
That's really interesting,
of
actually.
jumping sheep, of counting sheep, but there's like more Catholic.
Like a guided, for real, the guided meditation where you're slowly bringing, like dimming the lights, getting dark. I kind of like that quite a bit.
Yeah, naps are fun.
I don't do podcasts at all.
You don't listen?
No, yeah. I'm aware of very few. There's one neat podcast that I'm aware of, American Catholic History. Local
Are you still
people
getting
have
him in
it.
the camera?
Sorry.
Like you've fully
shifted over and down, but
I ate a melatonin before I've become aware, American Catholic History podcast.
Is it
local
good?
people have it. Yeah.
Nice.
It's like a short period of time, and it goes through really interesting like American Catholic history, like the roots of Catholicism in America.
Wow. Local
guy, Tom Crow, and his wife Noelle run it. It's great. But other than that, like I couldn't name, is this a podcast? What is this?
This is a podcast.
This is a podcast. Podcast? Maybe I don't even know what a podcast is.
I think it used to be
honest.
Neil, you can correct me, but I think it used to be that podcasts were the audio things that you would download from an audio-like store like Apple or whatever. But then video got implemented into a lot of these things. So they're basically the same thing. So when if I watch the Joe Rogan podcast, I'm not watching a video, I'm listening to a podcast. It's just all called podcast.
Is this horror one just audio? Or is there something to watch? Okay.
Oh man, there's some really cool. I'm going to give you some... I'm going to give you some really great horrific titles, okay?
To his podcast.
No, not this one, but this is a different horror podcast.
What? Hold on. Have you always loved the genre?
Horror? Yeah, I write horror.
You write horror?
I have my own podcast. It's called Sibling Horror.
No.
And that's true, yeah. You
It's
should
just
listen to
audio.
it. Yeah, it's real. I think it's really good.
So I have to listen to 2 podcasts now. I'll do like the rich American history and then like terrible, awful, horrible.
Yeah, some of it's pretty awful.
Did you get dark? Is this just like an outlet for your id?
I think I've always liked strange things. Like, I love The X-Files as a kid.
Yeah. That's a great show. Yeah.
And again, it was less how gross is that? And more, it's autumn and something bad's happening and it's weird. It's strange as hell. What could that be?
Yes.
I was going to ask, why do you think you like horror? Do you have a self-diagnosis?
So I wouldn't sit down and watch. Certainly, there's, I think, few other genres as filled with filth as the horror genre.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't watch, nor would I recommend anyone watch Freddy Krueger, or not because I'd say they're intrinsically wrong or something. I just think for the most part they're probably very unhelpful and awful. But then if I would say, okay, what's a movie that I would find scary and what is it about that I enjoy? What was that movie with the fella from The Office, Jim?
Oh,
Quiet Place?
Quiet Place.
That was...
So like horror, the definition of horror is something that invokes an intense feeling of fear, shock, or disgust.
Matt, do you think, okay, baseline, like you wake up in the morning, baseline, does it take a lot to get you to like 0? Do you think part of the reason horror is so interesting to you is it's like stimulating enough to capture your attention for a long period of time? Like, do you feel like baseline, it just takes a fair amount to capture
your attention?
And like, it doesn't like not much excite you,
That's probably
but horror
right.
kind of like,
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to quickly say yes or no.
I'm really curious.
We might go down a path.
What's your baseline?
And I might agree with both, even though they contradict. I wake up and I'm ready to go. I'm pumped.
Yeah.
But I tend to get over things quickly. To your point about it being able to hold my attention, that might be right.
Like, I wonder what.
My wife's the only thing that's been able to keep my attention this long.
Well played, sir.
She's terrific.
Well played.
I'm not even lying. Yeah. She's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. She scares me, shocks me.
Yeah, she scares me, shocks me. Really? All right, but here is, it's called the Dark Somnium. I'm not advocating that people listen to these.
Is this your story?
No. Okay. These are, I'm going to read you a 2-hour.
Can I be honest?
Relax.
Give me one. I want to hear the best title to one of yours.
I don't think I have good titles.
What's your favorite premise of one that you've done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite premise is this kid wakes up in his bed one night and he's in a country rural town, and usually you could just hear the wind blowing and a dark dog barking in the distance, and he hears a man's voice, not his father's, deeper than his, say, "I'm outside your house." And then he makes his way into the house. "I'm inside your house. I'm walking up the stairs." And he hides under his blanket, and the man pulls and then finally the protagonist throws the blankets off and there's nothing there. And then he notices under his bed there's a rubber Nike dirty sneaker, and that the man has crawled under his bed and is hiding like a kid, but not very well. And there's a lump in the mattress. And he starts to giggle. Oh! Man's starting to giggle. It's either gay or horrific or both. And he runs down to tell his father, and his father comes up with him and he's not there, but then that dad isn't his dad. Oh my God.
Creepy.
And the man breaks apart like Lego under the bed. So that's right. So the dad comes up and the dad sees the man under the bed. He's like, "See, there's nothing to fear here. There's nothing worried."
He sees
the man under the bed, and the kid's afraid. And so the real dad starts pulling out the man. He's like, "I'm just removing his leg, part of his torso." And it says the ends of his... We really have to do a trigger warning at some point. The ends
this 8 minute clip is gonna be
bloody.
Fire. Yeah.
They were more like a mannequin pieces.
Oh my gosh.
And then we don't know if the dad... Okay. So
that's your story.
That's one of my stories,
Oh my gosh.
And I've got another story that's probably my favorite, where a guy's dog speaks to him and it makes him crazy.
That was actually what happened with the Summer of Sam. Do you remember this guy?
I have no idea what that is.
He's a serial killer who was, I think he's out in New York.
Is it a real story?
Yeah. He was up in his room. I think he was a schizophrenic man up in his room. It was hot. It was in New York summer, 70s maybe? I don't know. Neil?
I'm looking here.
Summer of Sam. there's this dog barking persistently. And I think he thought that the dog was talking to him. Make sure this is right. But I think he thought the dog was talking to him. And he went on a killing spree.
Oh, that'll happen. Well, I didn't know about that. But this little story is about 14, 15 minutes long. It's called Walls. And so one day the dog turns around and looks at him and says, "No one will ever believe you." He turns back around, and it's just what happens to this man. It's my favorite story. All right.
Okay.
Here are some titles that are freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
Ready? Someone has been standing outside my house for over a year.
Wait, hold on. That's the title of the podcast? Or like of the story?
Oh, here's another one. This one's terrifying. Ready? My wife has been peeking at me from around corners and behind furniture. Shut up. Isn't that horrific? No one thinks so?
Too long.
The Museum of Humanity's Final War. Doesn't that make you want to click on it? What's this one called? Creepy internet pictures come from somewhere. I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
And I don't think that's very good. The Other Side of the Grave. Lock the Door. That's a good one.
Lock the Door.
That's really good.
That is good.
I know why we never returned to the moon.
Because we've never been there.
Oh,
let's go.
Blow that up, Neil.
So it looks like we have been to the moon.
According to the American government.
Okay, the murders were, I think they were titled like Son of Sam or something
Son
like that.
of Sam, yeah, okay.
The Son of Sam murders. I think there was a Spike Lee movie, Summer of Sam.
Okay.
And then...
there was a dog barking, though, I think he said.
It's in the 1976. I haven't gotten to what he...
I think it was Hot in the Dog.
Okay, sorry. This one's probably the best so far.
To be honest.
The Thing in the Basement is getting better at mimicking people. That doesn't... Okay, now look at the photo. That doesn't scare you.
Those are scary photos, but yeah. I want to know what the thing is.
My job... Exactly, that's where you want to click. My job is watching a woman trapped in a room. Oh, God.
Can I say... This is not horror. And I put this out freely to the world if somebody wants to do something with this. I think the best idea I've ever had, it's horror in a different sort of way, is it could be a poem or a short film, but it starts with a little girl dancing sort of in the mud. It's like muddy, earthy, and her mom sort of standing on a porch watching her, standing from somewhere watching her through a door frame. And the girl's twirling and twirling and twirling. And she's catching snowflekes on her tongue.
Only they're not snowflakes.
Only they're not
dandruff.
snowflakes. No, dude, she's in a prison camp. She's in like Auschwitz. And it's the ashes from the smokestack. She's catching the ashes from the burnt bodies on her tongue. And her mom's sort of horrified and like pulls her away. And then the soldiers come and get she and her mom, and they're marching them to the gas chamber. And her mom's recounting all of these passages from the Old Testament to her, and ends with the passage where the smoke fills the tent, like smoke being a symbol of God's presence when the smoke fills the temple. And the mom reminds the little girl that smoke filling the temple is is the presence of Yahweh. And so the final scene is they're in this gas chamber, and the little girl's so scared. All of a sudden she says, "Look, Mom."
That's a great beginning and ending right there. I love the tie-in.
Yeah, Yahweh. And as the smoke fills the chamber, they all fall to their knees and kind of... But if somebody wants to turn that into a beautiful poem or a 10-minute...
Anyone knows Steven Spielberg?
If Spielberg's listening.
Look at this one. If you see an ice cream truck in your neighborhood, go inside and lock the doors. That's good. It's been...
Wait, explain what these are to me.
I don't know. I haven't listened to them.
You click them, though. You click them
and then it's an audio podcast.
It's just a story.
Yeah. That people have written, and I think... The Man with the Woolly Face.
So I like that better. So it's like 3 words.
Don't show anybody.
It's short. That's horrifying. that is the kind of stuff that sounds scary to me. The other ones are really long. Like my wife has been looking at me from sometimes under the cutting board, but also sometimes in the shower, occasionally on Tuesday morning. She's like, that is not scary. It's too many words.
Matt, are you familiar with bad 2-sentence horror?
No.
If you Google bad 2-sentence horror, it's people trying to do what you're talking about, but missing by far.
2-sentence. I'm so excited. All right. Cheeseburger.com. What's that?
I don't know. I don't know where I would find it. I've just seen it on
How to Matt get a virus on
I know.
live YouTube.
Dad, it's time for you to open your Christmas presents, I said jokingly. What? I don't understand what's
That's
happening.
the title?
One day I was walking down the street and someone started to chase me. He cried when he saw the acceptance letter from Stanford, as he wished his parents could be here to see it. I don't know what these
Just
are.
sad.
Yeah, that's
They're really
touching.
bad.
Well,
I just
know that
bought
there's-
new boots, and then it says horror twist to stomp my dog.
Dude.
A guy said I was too ugly to get a girlfriend, and now that I've killed him, he won't be getting a girlfriend either.
Oh my god.
Is this kind of what you mean now? I think I've found it. I'm the one that always knows when you've got uncovered toes. Whilst asleep, I'll uncover your feet. Then those tasty treats I'll eat. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, what
You
I've
guys
seen
have seen
is
some
probably
dark
some of it. It's just,
corners of the internet.
the
y'all.
thing is, I think there's a Reddit which is called 2-sentence horror, and so then often just really poor ones get screenshotted.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of
that's
different
what I'm
ways it
looking
can
at.
go wrong.
That's what I'm looking at. Listen to this one. This is a terrible one. Like this, you can tell this guy probably thought this was really good. I went to my grandma's house. Let's just say she wasn't in. What?
Yeah, because she was at the Kroger. Like,
My
what?
mum always said that our family couldn't handle peppers. It was only when I felt my teeth falling out that I really understood what she meant. This is what you're talking about, yeah?
Well, yeah, the ones I've seen,
Are better. Are
well, it's
arguably
just
better.
like they go bad and wrong ways. I don't know.
It's like it's gratuitous, it's poorly written. When the blood starts piercing the surface, that's when you know the steak is medium rare. I watched helplessly as Gordon was searing what was once my thigh muscle.
Like Gordon Ramsay is.
Is that? I don't even know if they're smart enough to get that
Oh my
connection.
gosh.
I sat alone in the dark. We're just going to keep going until
Matt,
you leave.
this is
I sat alone in the darkness waiting for someone to come and fix the elevator when I heard the guard's voice over the intercom. Don't worry, someone will be there soon to get you both out.
It just sounds like a legitimate
That's pretty
problem.
good. That's pretty good. They thought they were alone in the elevator and someone said, we're coming to get both of you out. It's kind of, it's not
Well,
bad.
like that, those elevators they're like electronic. So when they stop, somebody knows.
Yeah.
It's not scary.
You're like my wife who like ruins stories with your logic.
Matt, we're
Well, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
Shut up and just enjoy it.
Actually.
Actually.
Oh. You guys are funny.
What's cool is that no one's going to have watched this far into the
they're
video.
wet. We've lost them.
They've deserved this at this point.
Yeah.
All right, just to see how many people have watched this far into the show, I would like you to give us your best bad 2-sentence horror.
Actually, that's pretty funny.
I woke up one morning full of enthusiasm. Then I noticed... Oh!
What they notice?
I don't know if I should read it or not. Like, it's bad, but... Okay, big trigger warning.
Oh my gosh.
Or should I just show it? I gotta read it now. If I
Let me
just
see it.
Get a
I'll
second
be the
opinion.
voice of
All right.
reason.
Second opinion.
I'll be the Vox Rationis.
read that and then read that. Don't read all at once.
I woke up. Oh no. No.
Don't read it.
You can't read
All right,
that.
I won't read it.
Oh my gosh. That
What is
one's
that?
dark.
It's so silly.
Here's a scare. Like this would be scary, right? What if you woke up and your hands were sewn onto where your feet should be, and your feet
Yeah.
were where your hands should be?
See, you've gone there too. Don't pretend you're better than this.
Oh, that's This is
But no,
I go to different places.
What
on the
I like to
internet.
do is the least amount of strangeness that would still frighten you. That's
Yeah.
what's best.
I loved A Quiet Place. Like A Quiet Place was, I really like that. That's the
Yeah.
range I have. I can't do the gory.
Yeah, I'm like that for the
Even
most
like a
part.
Telltale Heart. Do you remember who wrote A Telltale Heart?
No idea.
It's like
Oh, that's Edgar.
short story by Edgar Allan Poe,
I
where this
do
guy
like him.
kills a man and he like buries the heart under his floorboards. and
Yes.
he starts to boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. He hears the beating of the heart. Even that's like a little too.
I like that.
Do you know why? I think part of my job, like knowing that, like there are people out there who have done and do this sort of thing, is just too. Like I can't read about serial killers. I can't read. It just gets too real for me.
Okay, yeah, fair
And I
enough.
feel like
Here's a question for you. Ready, Neil and Matt? What's the lowest thing? What do I mean? The simplest thing that could happen if we walked out these doors that would freak us out. So it's like if
Oh,
you were like,
yeah,
well, the
yeah.
curtains turn
Yeah,
into
yeah,
blood.
yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
obviously
that's-
far too much.
yeah.
Simplest thing.
I got one. So here's one, and this isn't
Yeah.
the best, but just get us started.
Yeah.
We walk out there and there's a child that none of us know playing with blocks in the corner.
Dude,
just content.
Yes, singing to herself.
What the hell?
The Peppa Pig song.
And the door's locked and we don't know who dropped her off. And so if that actually happened, we'd be like, I don't know if we'd be horrified. We'd be like, where
Dude, I'd be horrified.
Where did you come from?
That's like a common thing, right? In these like horror films, like the sound of laughing and playing children.
It's the juxtaposition of the strangeness with the
horror,
with the soothing, or with the something that should settle you. It's like it's why nursery rhymes are coupled with graphic depictions.
I want to hear Neil's actually.
I was gonna say, well, I thought of walking out into the hallway, and I've pictured before just like seeing like a kind of really like dark outline of a figure, kind of like move like out of sight, and then maybe we go investigate, and there's just you can't find anything.
See, my horror stories usually have a moral to them, right? So here's an idea I had. I had an idea of somebody who sees something in his periphery. Is that the word, periphery? Not peripheral. His peripheral vision, periphery. And if you look at it, you die. And so this has been happening, and maybe you start to hear about this thing, and so you really want to look at it.
Like that.
But that thing is the thing, like alcoholism or pornography or the thing we don't want to look at. But see, that's not a good moral. Don't look at the thing. Don't cope with it. Just drink alcohol.
You're right. Avoid. No, that's interesting.
Come on in. Have a seat, said the dentist. Who invented the electric chair?
I like this one. Oh, finally, I'm all alone. I sat in my bedroom at midnight. No, you're not, said Knife Guy.
Oh, Knife Guy. So I heard this from somebody. I'm not making this up, but I thought it was really good. A man sits alone in his living room one night, and he is startled by the piercing screams of his daughter. He spills his tea over and bolts up the stairs. He opens the door and can barely see her in the twilight. And she says, "Daddy," she's curled up on her bed, "something's under my bed." And to placate her, he walks over and calms her down. And he lifts up the skirt of the bed, and what does he see? But his daughter saying, "Daddy, something's on top of my bed." Freak! Isn't that good? That's terrifying. So I'll come up with an idea like that, and then I'll just write a story up to the end of it.
Guys, I find I'm in very different places.
What is this? This is so good. New house, new life, they say, I said out loud, as the malicious pit bull approached to maul me to death.
Dude, what about like a high interest rate is like horrifying to me now. You know what I mean? Like, welcome to your new home. Your interest rate's 5.75%. The bank said. That's like horrifying to me.
So I was joking about this the other day, that when I was a teenager, I used to listen to heavy metal.
Yeah.
Now, if you're like, what do you listen to? I would say, I listen to rainy coffee shop ambience with calm jazz music and rain sounds for sleep, studying, and relaxation.
Why? Why do you ask? Right? Yeah.
Grandma fell asleep for the last time in the hospital bed. Something else woke up. It's not as bad as the last one. I wasn't scared of long hallways. That wasn't until I met the hallway man.
I've seen that one before. That's like the one I had in mind when I said was that specific one.
Are you a horror guy, Neil, too? Do you do horror?
Not really.
It's so weird that you guys can't
like
fall asleep. It's weird that you have to do all these things to kind of fall asleep.
When I listen to horror, it's not that creepy, someone's been outside of my house. It's not that. It's more suspense fiction. Okay, one more and then you can answer.
Real quick, how do you fall asleep to it though? So you said, okay, this is...
You know what's funny? I don't need to be committed to it. It needs to be interesting enough that my attention isn't scattered on 1,000 thoughts, but not so interesting that I can't fall asleep. And so many...
You'll doze off listening to it.
I'll wake up to the end.
Oh my God.
I know, that can't be good. Listen to this. And then you can answer. In 1950, there were 2.5 billion people on Earth. Now there is 8. But since Sarah just died, I guess the number went down to 7. Yeah, that would follow. That would follow.
It's just...
That is how numbers work.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, short answer, horror, no. Although recently, I mean, I like stuff like Edgar Allan Poe, and I really like Lovecraft and stuff like that.
What's
like
that?
Just
Lovecraft.
What
like,
is that?
H.P. Lovecraft, the American horror gothic author.
Oh, I don't know.
It's like Cthulhu, the squid thing.
Okay, don't know it.
No?
No.
Well, it's like just it's like a cosmic horror is the idea.
Okay.
So it's like Cthulhu, the story as they go, they follow this like archaeological trail.
Yeah.
And then they take a boat and they go to this island that like you look at it and there's like shapes that don't make sense. Then the Cthulhu comes out of the water and like just instantly like everybody else on the boat just like dies except for the writer of the book. Just stuff like that. That's like you're
Are these
having
stories or are they
they're short
movies?
stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, the what's his name? Berkowitz, the son of Sam.
Yeah.
It was his. He said that his neighbor's black Labrador, a demon spoke to him through it.
Yeah,
So-
dude. There it is. So it turns out that story you wrote, Matt, is actually just
A ripoff.
history. Historical.
This is so fun. I love
nonfiction.
getting to, you asked earlier if I find it hard to do this podcast, and I notice something in my body when I'm interviewing somebody and you start speaking, I relax. And I didn't notice that I was tense before that. So it's clearly the case that I'm not having a conversation. Now I feel like I am. Shit, everything's gone to pot on this one. But like, like in most conversations, I'm like trying to make it go and trying not to. But as soon as you talk, I'm like, oh God, thank God. I can
pressure's
just
off.
like, so that's interesting. I got to get better at
I
just
bet there's
being.
a pressure at making something look natural.
Well, see, it's so nice because I know you and I love you and I've enjoyed. You're a great conversationalist, and so that helps too. That's huge. I would rather have someone who's a great conversationalist than someone's like the top of their field in something who can't talk very.
Yeah.
All right, I want to share something with you in a sec. So
Please.
see if you can come up with some padding while I look for it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you like horror?
Do I? Great question. I don't. I think I have a very active imagination, and it does not take much for things to sort of disturb me. And so I try to steer clear of, unless it's sort of sensation, like A Quiet Place. I really like A Quiet Place. These things that clearly aren't real, but the kind of horror that could be real. So like serial killers and that clowns. This sort of thing. Clowns are just
They're over the top.
I am a grown man, and if I watched it tonight, I would not sleep for days. I just can't do.
Do you have any like therapist analysis of why specific things you think people find scary?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I do think there's something about the horror or scary genre. I think some people, for some people, like life is sort of baseline, a little bit dull, in that the horror scare genre just captures their attention a little bit in ways that
That's right.
colors are a little muted.
Honestly,
and
it's the same thing with pornography.
Yeah.
No, you
It
said
gives a
yeah
little-
too soon. I said pornography after you went, yeah. You had no idea it was about to
I
drop.
always do a triple yeah. Somebody pointed that out on the
no.
last.
No, but I mean, that's what pornography does. It captures all of your attention, which
Yeah.
is probably why, don't you think?
And I'm sure there's a...
I'm not saying, I'm saying pornography is evil. I'm not saying that
Yes.
horror always is, but I do think there's something so... just kind of reaches into you. And
There's an
fear does that.
intensity,
Disgust
fear.
does that. It's not something you sit back and contemplate
No.
dispassionately.
It's visceral. It gives you a visceral reaction. And that can really get people's attention. Attention follows emotion often. That's an interesting story.
All right, so now that we've read a bunch of crap 2-line stories, let me read you a paragraph of this story that I wrote.
This is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel good. We didn't just read Dostoevsky. We read that.
Right.
So I'm reading halfway down through the horror story. See what you think.
Okay.
It's going to be hard. When I
No
was
context.
10, my little sister Sandra, who had recently died in a farming accident, fell out of the sky. Her body.
I'm having this
Really?
what is, okay.
Chucky.
I feel like we're in an alternate universe here. Okay. You're reading me one of your horror stories.
Yeah.
In the middle. You're just dropping in the middle here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't want to bore you. I mean, I could read the whole thing to you, but it would bore everybody,
this is
including.
so Sandra dies in a farm.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is.
Yes, that's right. Her
Could
body
be a
fell on us.
combine,
We had just buried her that morning, but a few hours later, there she was, broken and mangled on the little table we had set up with cakes and coffee for the funeral reception. I remember our relatives and friends absolutely beside themselves, screaming and crying out. A few fainted. Some stood in bewilderment, scanning the sky to see where she could have fallen from. My dad and I and a few of his friends gathered up Sandra's body in a tablecloth and laid it in the back of my father's truck to take her back to the cemetery. When we arrived at the burial site, we found what looked like a bomb crater. Poking through the dirt, we discovered that the lid of the coffin had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Dad said it was like someone had buried dynamite underneath and then hit the detonator. We smoothed out the gravesite and reburied Sandra then and there, wrapped up in the tablecloth. I don't remember much else, just that no one said anything, as if it would be irreverent or disrespectful, so I didn't either. The next morning, Sandra fell out of the sky again.
Classic Sandra.
This time, classic Sandra. This time, she hit the mailman, John Adams, who was on his morning rounds. She landed on him at such a speed that he also died.
Yeah, absolutely.
A few of us got together to bury them, yada, yada. We dug up a different hole in the cemetery, thinking it was some seismic activity that was causing the ground to spurt them out, but then they both started falling out of the sky. Sandra and John, no matter how many times we reburied them. And what happens, right, is their bodies start breaking apart and killing everybody in the town.
But then if you bury so you have this problem of like sort of compounding. Listen, if you start burying more people, more bodies are falling, more people are going to die eventually.
So here's how here's how it starts. Here's how the story starts. My name is Daniel Price. I run the only nursery here in Birdsville. That makes me pretty special compared to other plant sellers around the world. You see, Birdsville is a desert town where very little grows above ground. If you search for us online, you will find out why our houses, churches, and supermarkets are all underground. You'll read about our extreme summer temperatures and the lack of rain, but it wasn't the heat that first sent us underground. It was Sandra!
Let's go.
But you know what's funny is I pay a red-blooded American to read these stories because nothing's scary about this. Right. No, what happened was...
Oh, you have somebody...
Yeah. In fact, I talked about two horror podcasts. I talked about two horror podcasts today, Knife Point Horror and Sibling Horror. I write Sibling Horror with my sister. The guy who narrates and writes for Knife Point Horror also reads for my podcast. I think his voice is so great, he reads it. Let's just wrap this up and try to remove people from the horror genre. No one's remained if they are offended, I'm sure, at this point. But the reason I do it is it's nice to do something that you're not great at and that be okay.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a hobby that you do because it brings you joy, even though you're not great at it.
No,
like
I think
when you were a kid, you did stuff, you didn't have to be the best one out there. It's like
sinned from the perfectionism and that. Yeah. It is good for people to have that and to appreciate that and to do that.
Right, so your new book, which is not a horror story,
about horror,
is
the horror of our wounds. Right.
Yeah. There's a link in the description.
Yeah.
People can click it.
6 steps to help you heal from life's hurts.
That's awesome.
Try to make it manageable. But this has been fun, man.
Yeah, this has been terrific. Thank you so much for coming on. And
I hope this fills the gap in your August tech fast.
Yeah.
The poor...
Well, it's funny. I mean, I originally did this was so that you could, because I thought the book wouldn't be out yet.
Yeah.
But it just so happened. Maybe I'll release it during the month of hunting.
I think it's going to be great.
Amidst photos of me holding an elephant head, lion testicles.
Therapist says big game hunting is what really helps humans thrive.
Remember when that thing went viral recently? Well, not recently, a few 5, 6, 7 years back. The dentist guy killed that lion.
There's one too with a woman who, I forget, a big game hunter. She was a female. She had killed maybe an elephant, and people went crazy on that too.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, they're endangered, beautiful animals, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you can hunt elephant on certain preserves.
Really?
I think. Again, can I be honest?
When I hear the click.
Dude, I need your help.
You need a Neil.
I need a Neil.
You could ask him to come help you with your set.
Neil,
he does
everything. My
everything.
podcast currently has. Yeah, I'm up to Ask Catholic Therapist. I'm up to like 10 or 12 videos.
Nice. Ask a Catholic therapist.
Yeah,
you can hunt elephants.
Yeah,
you shouldn't. It says in parentheses, but you can.
Theoretically, it's possible, but I need a Neil. I recorded 2 videos last night. Listened to them. My microphone was like, I need a Neil so bad.
It's frustrating.
And then I say things and I'm like, is that right? Did I just say something that's...
Yeah.
If I could have Neil just Googling behind me.
He can't keep up with the amount of falsehoods I spit out. It's not his fault.
Neil's just shaking his head back there.
I was like, talked to by a dog. He just made that up completely. We're already talking about horror.
I've been pretty close on most of the things I've said.
No, you've been
pretty close.
It's all been spot on. I don't think there's anything
I do
wrong.
think, though, like it's a newer way of communicating. This live, free-flowing, casual conversation. Like, when did that exist 20 years ago? Where could people in large numbers come and listen to 2 people actually just chat, as opposed to this is a 15-minute segment, 2-minute segment, and you're the expert and you've done your research and you get on, you say your thing.
Yeah.
So I do think people realize that when you're in that kind of back and forth that you cannot expect precision or accuracy all the time.
Yeah.
No.
I would hope they would.
Yeah.
I would hope they would. I think some people, if you read comment sections, some people seem to think that you should have like sort of encyclopedic knowledge of all things at all times, or you shouldn't speak, which is like
the other thing people did
difficult.
though is they would be highly edited things.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure you're like me. People don't like edited things. They just want to see it raw. It feels more human. It feels more.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm actually always afraid to do. One of the reasons I'm afraid to do recordings with people that aren't live is that I'm afraid that they'll say something like, "Sorry, could we do that again?" And I don't want them to have that freedom.
Yeah.
So if it's live, they can't do that. They just have to press on.
Yeah.
And that's when people are at their best anyway, when they just say whatever they want, not when they're heavily guarded and trying to say everything perfectly.
I think it's right. Dude, that is freedom. And how we spend so much time reacting to our hurts, our wounds, like that word, that single word freedom I've been obsessed with it. And it's what guided, I think, the book and we spend so much time being guarded and afraid and not that we don't have the freedom that Christ wants us to have. I think it's 1 Colossians 5:13. St. Paul says, "You are called to freedom, brothers and sisters."
What he acts?
I was like,
You are called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Colossians 5:13.
Dude.
Oh yeah, it's the first part's all about
Full disclosure, I knew that off because it's so heavily used in the book.
Dude, this one. There's another horror one. Mother. Hello, I am looking for a friendly clown for my son's birthday. Are you one of those? Murder clown. Yeah.
Dude, but clowns, you can't joke about clowns.
Why are they so scary?
I don't know, but John Wayne Gacy, the famous serial
Do you know
killer,
that beautiful
was a clown, dude. He was like at like kids' party. That's horrifying.
Have you heard that song by Sufjan Stevens about John Wayne Gacy? So good, isn't it? Oh my God.
Dude, I don't know.
On his best behavior, I'm really just like him.
Yeah.
Look underneath the floorboards, see the secrets I have hid.
Oh, guys, I know one Sufjan Stevens song, and it's like his version of like How Great the Father's Love or something. It's like a really nice little Christian. He does like a How Great Thou Art. It's a little Christian song. You guys are in like the deep, dark desires of his heart. Like, Dad, this is interesting. You were black a lot on your podcast too.
The what?
You were a lot of black.
Yeah, I know. The child cried as Creepy Joe entered the room. His jaw unhinged and his fangs grew as he smelled the child's fear.
This one's political.
Yeah. Now that I'm getting how these work, the IKEA incident. I decided to go on a tour of the IKEA factory. Little did I know that I would find the creature that lays the IKEA meatballs.
Dude, how about this one? What if, here's a story. You go to the IKEA factory and you find out that the meatballs are really, this whole thing is getting me into a dark place. The meatballs are actually people.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a bit inappropriate.
Who
I
have
feel like you've crossed the line.
Can I be honest, Matt? This is darker than I'd like. It's people who have returned the furniture. Like, bro, hey, real quick, would you just come back here with your broken furniture? Those are the meatballs. Yeah. I'm not good at this.
Dad, it's time for you to open your Christmas presents, I said jokingly. My smile turned to horror as his urn levitated and flew towards the tree.
Dude,
This one's really good. One day I was walking down the street and someone started to chase me. He said, "I want to kidnap you."
I actually think that's horrifying. Kidnap is horrifying.
That is so funny. All right, I want to find that really horrific one so I can read it to him after instead of not to
yeah. Dude, that one, that will actually harm people.
What have I been looking up that this stuff pops up? Nothing good.
Apparently not. The algorithm has your number, buddy.
Dr. Breuninger, are you familiar with the idea of parasocial relationships, like between kind of any kind of celebrity personality and people who kind of imagining they have relationships?
No. What is this?
It's called parasocial relationships. I didn't know if you were familiar.
How's it work? So there's a celebrity.
Just essentially, if there's people listening to a podcast or something like that, then they begin to have this kind of attachment to that person and have a like imagined like relationship with them.
Yeah.
Which is imagined to be two-dimensional, where it's really just one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Which I think isn't necessarily inherently unhealthy as long as it's acknowledged that it's one-dimensional and not
Yeah.
two-dimensional. That's the idea, is that. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, does it only have to be celebrity? Because I mean, we do something like you can do this with friends or loved ones who are sort of lost, who you have lost, or have passed, or kind of keep some sort of image of them alive in your mind that you. I wonder if is that with anybody? Is the issue just being in relation, sort of an imagined relation between you and anyone, or does it have to be sort of a celebrity or somebody you don't know well? People do this when they're estranged from their parents, probably, I imagine.
I can see that.
Is that
the word applying? I've only heard it specifically like coming from the conversation of like celebrities talking about not knowing how to interact with people who like talk to them as if
they know them.
Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing. How many people who watch your show start to feel like they know you pretty well? I mean, you do. We're talking about things you're interested in. You mention your kids, you mention your wife. They do feel like they're getting an insight.
And they are.
Yeah. And I wonder how much.
What's so strange about it is like, if someone watches this regularly, they probably know more about me than they know about most people in their lives, because most of the people they know in their lives probably don't speak this openly about what's going on with them. Yeah. And it would be imprudent for them too. It might be imprudent for me to hear. I don't know. But yeah, so it is a bit strange. It is when you meet people. I always try to, because often.
How should they interact with you if they meet you though? Then, I mean, that's an interesting question. Since they know so much about you, and since it's been freely given,
weird,
if it's been freely given, what should they?
That's
how's Cameron doing?
Yeah, and why shouldn't they? Like, it would be almost weirder if they pretended not to know anything.
Yeah. What is your wife's name again? Like,
yeah.
Talk about her all the time on the show.
Good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that would be strange.
You say?
Yeah.
It is a weird sort of, this medium gives.
It looks like the term specifically came from like the introduction of mass media.
Yeah.
And it was originally just like any interaction with mass media by an individual. So I think it's specifically that.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's like recently, not super recently, but there was like a therapist who was going and talking to all the Twitch streamers and doing like a kind of public therapy session with them. And that came up a lot, was these parasocial relationships. Anyway.
What do you think it is too? So Twitch I'm just become familiar with some of this stuff, that we will pay to watch people play games. What is it though? Right, because it's not always people that are better than you, is it? I mean, are the people on Twitch always better at the game than you?
I imagine if they're a successful Twitcher, is that what they're called?
Well, it depends on the game. There's like skill-based games where you watch it to kind of appreciate and be entertained by how good these people are. Like watching sports, you wouldn't want to watch people who are bad at playing sports. But then there's other things like story-based games where you would play it to kind of experience and be part of the story, but you can also get most of that benefit out of it. And then an added layer of there's this personality who you get to see how they interact with this game and the social elements of this story-based decision kind of game. So that's the different thing. And then there's also another level of people kind of reacting to different things, like a poorly made game. Maybe they react to it and it's funnier because they're like putting things into it or interacting with other people through the game.
Yeah. That is fast. That's actually kind of fascinating to me that there's sort of this voyeurism that we, instead of interacting purely with the thing ourselves or somebody like with us watching it, we're like, we like to watch others.
I was talking to Bishop Scott McCaig the other day, and he said that he was referring to some sort of socialistic, or not socialistic, but some social study. Maybe he was talking about Pittsburgh, I forget, where he said it used to be the case that parents at the end of the night would all go sit out on their front porch because it was hot. And the kids would all play on the street, and they'd let the fire hydrant go, and everyone kind of knew each other. And he said two things changed that, and I'm sure we could go back in time and say that there was more, but air conditioning and TV, right? We all kind of went in, and that community died, right? And you think, that makes sense to me. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can totally see how that happens. I have no question with it. But then you think, God, technology is running so fast now that what has Twitter done to us? Like, what has YouTube done to us? What has gaming sites done to us? Like, we don't even, we have no space to even see, but it can't be good.
It's really hard. You know, there's a community down in Austin, Texas. This guy, I forget his name, but he started something called Community First. And it's to address the homelessness problem. And so basically the federal government has a program called Housing First, which is a model for housing the homeless. And the idea is you give people sort of a home, no strings attached. So if you're without a home or shelter, you get a home, no strings attached. You don't have to be sober. You don't have to be, right? And so what they found is that Housing First, if you give people homes, they tend to keep the homes, which is fine. But you don't see a reduction, not consistently or reliably, in drug use, alcohol use, mental health issues, or employment, but they tend to keep their house. So this guy thought, well, look, that's interesting, but also problematic because, yeah, sure, they're homeless, they stay in their house, but they're not flourishing. Mm-hmm. So he started a community in Austin called Community First, ! So Housing First is the federal government's program. His is called Community First, ! Which I always thought was sort of like a middle finger to Housing First, you know? But his idea was, we don't just need homes, we need community. So he bought this land in Austin.
I know of this.
Do you know of this? Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you ever heard of a guy called Aaron Barter?
Yes, Aaron Barta.
He went down there, yeah.
So my buddy Kevin Stewart married Deanne Barta, Aaron's sister, and they moved there. And so I got familiar with the community through my friend Kevin, and we were doing a little, we were collecting some data on some of the folks down there as part of a study. But part of what this guy's point was he manicured this sort of community, and part of what he took away was backyards, because he thought backyards let you isolate. So everything had front yards, and it was sort of manicured.
Love it.
Or manufactured to sort of create community or interaction, so that you had to bump into people. You couldn't just pull back completely. Now you had a home, and people need privacy, and they need time to recharge, but like you had to bump in, and they have this beautiful sort of pillar in the middle of the community where the homeless who die can be buried, their ashes can be laid.
Wow.
So that they still have a community even in death at the heart of the. Yeah.
How's that community going? I mean,
last I checked, it was going well. I mean, I think he was actually trying to raise money to buy money. I want to buy some money. Yeah. To develop another site to expand. And so, but yeah, this idea of community and the things that sort of pull at community and, anyway, yeah, that's sort of interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad I live in Steubenville for that reason.
Yeah, but look, some people find community in these gaming, I guess, right? In these gaming communities and these online areas. There's something to that. It's not for nothing.
There's something to it, I think, in the way that it's something for a poor person to find something to eat from the trash. It's like it's not nothing.
Yeah,
but it's not where we should rest.
Not the fullness. Yeah,
there's something that worries me about things that aren't real.
Yeah.
So looking it up, there was a phase 2 where they had an additional 24 acres.
What was his name? What's this guy's name? Forget his name. He wears a huge cross. So he wears PFG shirts like this, white PFG shirts, and he has a huge San Damiano cross around his neck at all times.
Franciscans. Love him.
Yeah.
Alan Graham.
Alan Graham. Yeah, that's right.
And there's Amber Fogarty.
Don't know her. Yeah, Alan.
Well, where are we at time-wise now?
We are at 2:57, so we got 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
That three hour mark.
We gotta wait.
We don't have to wait.
I guess we'll ride this one out with something. Let's land the plane.
It's been coming down for about 20 minutes now.
Was that it? So who told me recently? Somebody told me recently I didn't know how to land the plane. They're like, Matt, you just gotta land the plane.
Is it? No, this has been great. No, we can wrap up. Thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. We'll put links to Matt's podcast and new book below. Go check them out. Subscribe.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. We'll do it again.
Neil's like reluctant to close.
Yeah, don't close it out. I think